Hello again, everybody, to all of you out there, and welcome to the Jim Cornette Experience. Some of you are quarantined, some of you aren't quarantined. All of us probably should be quarantined with protests and plagues and murder hornets and bad pro wrestling. What's next? It's raining frogs. Hallelujah, it's raining frogs. It's the I can't take any of this shit anymore edition of the Jim Cornette Experience, and to join me, my broadcast partner, the owner of Last's Social Distancing Massage, where they take your money, stand 6 feet away from you, and it rubs you the wrong way. He's Hawaiian Brian, the podcasting lion, the king of the Arcadian Vanguard Podcast Network, and so much more. Your friend and mine, the great Brian Last.
Aloha, Jim. A pleasure to be here once again for another wonderful time of experience and so much more.
You know, you can't even have a date anymore at a massage parlor, an appointment, I should say, at a massage parlor, I guess, with this social distancing thing, unless she's got arms like Stretch Armstrong, where the four sisters on Thumb Street can be in one place, but she can be 8 feet away. I don't know. What the fuck is going on in the entire world? You know, people are not smart enough to reopen everything at this stage. Did you see it was on Twitter, obviously. I don't know where else it was. I think she was from Kentucky. A woman videoed going into a convenience store wearing a mask, but she had cut like a 2-inch wide hole in the mask from the nose down across the mouth to the chin, so that the fucking guy behind the counter is shooting this video when she walks in, and he says, "Hey, where'd you get that mask?" And she's like, "Oh, I did this. I cut the hole in it because it was so hard to breathe. So now I can breathe easier." Her whole mouth is uncovered. She's wearing a fucking cheek mask on each side.
There's a reason why people aren't wearing their lucha masks right now.
Well, this is the reason why that people are not smart enough to reopen everything. If everybody was doing what they're supposed to be doing, or just had half a fucking lick of sense, including the president, we'll talk about him shortly. It might be one thing, but you've got people like that running around. My only ventures, as you know now, out in the public realm since March 13th, which it's so fitting that March 13th was my last venture out, and I can remember it because March 13, 1979, man, Randy Macho Man Savage defeated Leaping Lanny Poffo for the ICW World Heavyweight Championship in Halifax, Nova Scotia, man. Dig it. March 13th. It's always stuck in my mind. Anyway, I've been to the post office and back many times, but just there and back, nowhere else. And now I'm seeing our governor is on television every night, even Sundays at 5 o'clock, telling people how we're doing. He's very calming and very intelligent, very friendly, telling us sort of like a fucking Southern version of the fucking, who was it? LaGuardia. Mayor LaGuardia read the funnies to the kids during the newspaper strike. He's very well-mannered, etc. And he's telling people, when you go out, wear your mask. It's our duty. It's our civic duty. And just this week, in my trips to the post office, I have seen numerous maskless people. I'm wearing the fucking mask, and actually, even though it's for other people, I still psychologically, I like wearing it. I don't want to breathe in these other people's shit. I know I don't have anything because I've been nowhere. Absolutely nowhere but there. So unless they have something, I ain't got it. So I'm covering my face up so I don't breathe any of their shit in. And I'm sure they appreciate not breathing mine in because they don't know that I've been ensconced here at the castle, so they shouldn't trust me either. That's why everybody's looking at each other sideways. Like it's the goddamn invasion of the body snatchers. Are you one of the pod people? As you walk in. Anyway, but these fucking assholes not wearing a mask. And I understand, first of all, if you don't have to be out in public, you shouldn't be out there wearing a mask anyway. I understand the people that have to go to work and have to do the various essential things. But I'm seeing 75-year-old women with no masks and no gloves wandering into post office to buy some flower stamps. What the fuck, lady? And I had my first 6-foot encounter The other day, it was I get there early and it was slow. I wheel my cart in, right? And I'm giving the guy in front of me 8 feet, not 6 feet, but 8 feet because there's nobody behind me. Well, then somebody else a couple minutes later comes behind me, so I move up a couple of feet into my 6-foot area, and it's even taped off on the post office floor. They got the 6-foot gradations, right, in red tape. This guy walks right up behind me. I thought he was going to pick my pocket. So I pushed my cart a little. Just then the guy walks up, so I push my cart up a little bit more because he's, wandered up a little bit more. And the guy takes another step. I had to turn around and say, brother, can I have my 6 feet? Well, it's some old guy not wearing a mask. What the fuck? These people are dangerous. And then, they do passports at the post office also. Brian, you're aware of this.
I'm very aware of it. I'm shocked that they still have passport business right now. I was just talking to the people at my place about that.
Yes. And here in this town, when they can't have all the windows staffed, so they're already at, and people are calling in. John the Hunchback came back to work finally. He got bored, sent it home, but he has that plexiglass face mask that covers his whole entire face. But if he sneezed, he'd be completely blinded. But it looks cool. It looks kind of like the first Iron Man, outfit. Anyway, and Tales of Suspense 39. But I digress. The point is, so they're already partly staffed, and there's people coming in to get passports when you shouldn't go anywhere, even if you can. But they're just in case, I guess. But anyway, so this fucking family comes in. This woman's in her 30s, this guy, and their 3 early teenage children. Flip-flops, bare feet, no mask, no... See, I don't care whether it's warm or cold. I'm wearing long sleeves, long pants. I got the fucking gloves on. I've got the mask on. I got my jacket over that because I want to make sure I got, shit in my pockets. I don't have to touch anything or pick anything up that's not already on my body. I'm very particular, Brian. So anyway, they come in looking like they're going to the beach. No mask, no gloves, no nothing. Fucking kids picking their nose, fucking wandering around, touching shit. Wiping their greasy, crumb-snatching fucking hands all over things that people are going to be touching. And they're standing, and they're 6 feet from me, but I figure there's 5 of them, so I should get 30 feet, right? What the fuck? I'm risking my life. And these people, that willy-nilly. And I'm wondering, is the new hate crime going to be against non-mask wearers? Because automatically they got heat when they walk in the fucking room now. For everybody that's got that goddamn fucking toilet paper stuck up over their fucking face. And these people come in just blowing fucking snot and fucking wheezing and shit all over things without any regard to anybody. Should we be allowed to take a fucking club to them?
I think that may be a bit too far, but I certainly think everyone right now should be wearing a mask if they go out in public.
I think they
and
should
a lot of places like
upon.
up here it's required. You can't go into any of these places. Not only is it mandated by the governor, but there are actually giant signs posted outside of a lot of these places. You cannot even enter, if it's a place that you ordered a meal and you want to get pickup, you can't even enter without a mask.
Well, yeah, that's the way we got the governor on TV telling us we ought to wear our masks, but I'm still seeing these people wandering around. Fuck's sake. Filth. I'm socially awkward anyway. You know this, right? Because I don't like, you've witnessed, I do not like to be in confined, closed-in spaces, and confined, closed-in spaces populated by people magnify that problem times 10. And and New York, that is one of the main reasons why my spidey sense is tingling every minute of the 24 hours of a day that I'm in New York City. Because you are never away from people and in a wide open environment, unless you're in goddamn Central Park, and then you don't know who you might fucking meet, you might not want to. But otherwise, it's too confining. I don't like, if I go to stores, I'm always cognizant when I'm going up and down the aisle to the grocery store or whatever, if I'm in somebody's way, because I don't want people to be in my way. And these people just willy-nilly just stop and stand there like pieces of human cholesterol in the fucking artery of the goddamn grocery stores. You can't get by them. And that was before we needed 6 feet. It's like can I just get by 6 inches? I'll take the chrome off your fucking push cart on my way by if you'll get out from in front of the canned peas, you fucking douchebag, is some of the things that I say to myself. So I'm already a little tense when I'm out in public. I don't like people behind me. That's even before Mid-South Wrestling. I never liked people. There were other reasons why when I was a teenager and went to the movies, I always sat in the back row. But I sat in the back row of the movies until my eyesight got to the point where I needed to get a little bit closer to the screen. It just simply, what now?
I hope you had a date when you were sitting in the back row.
Yeah, oh, for fuck's sake. Now, don't make my innuendos filthier than they already are. But I didn't like people behind me in the dark. And then the PTSD from Mid-South Wrestling, I like my buffer zone. I always want 6 feet. I think 6 feet's common courtesy. I don't go fucking humping up on people in public or sliding up behind them like I'm picking their fucking pockets. Some people just want to stand all over on top of you. And it was bullshit. That's why we're in this pickle. People standing all over the top of you, sticking their greasy fucking snotty fingers in your pocket, trying to steal your wallet and passing this virus on. And where do they have more pickpockets than anywhere in the country? New York City. I rest my case.
That stat is not out there. You don't know that for sure.
I just made it up. It's out there now.
That's not necessarily true. And by the way, you say you want a 6 feet buffer zone. They have the tape on the ground now at the post office by me, so you can see like every 6 feet where you're supposed to be.
Yes.
I don't think 6 feet's enough. I don't think I ever realized how close 6 feet is. I want 8 feet.
And especially, well, it ought to be double. You have to give double the space if the asshole's not wearing a mask. I don't know. It just the fucking world is gone haywire here. And I was not comfortable being out in public anyway, in a lot of cases. Now, to fan fest or something like that, you want to fucking put your arms around people and have pictures taken and hug people and shake hands and bullshit around and fucking put headlocks on and whatever the fuck. But not just random people wandering around the fucking streets or in a fucking public place that you happen to have to be in at that particular point in time. Those people need to stay as far away from me as possible. Anyway. What are you snickering at over there?
Laughing.
Snickerer?
I'm laughing. Sometimes I wonder how you exist in society at all. I mean, based on these rules that you're laying out here, how do you go to a restaurant? How do you go to a bar? How do you...
Hey, here's the thing. You never go out to eat at a restaurant on Friday or Saturday night. Preferably, you go and get the fuck out of there by 5:30, 5:45, or you wait till after 9 because that's, then you've missed the peak hours. You try to find the places that you like that are never crowded because they're good, but nobody knows they're there because they do a lousy job of advertising. And you combine your trips. If you do have to venture out in public, do everything you can think of you need to do for the next several days all at once so you don't have to do that again. I put 52 miles on Black Beauty in the month of April. And what that was basically fucking 16 trips to the fucking post office and back, or 18, or however many it was.
Do you do your supermarket trips when you do your post office trips, or do you?
Well, I used to.
Do you put on a different hazmat suit when you go?
No. I haven't done a supermarket trip now. I did the one when this whole thing started mid-March, and that's otherwise. Stace has been handling going in for limited items and off-peak hours and having them, pick it where they bring it out to you or whatever. And I'm handling the post office. And neither one of us have been anywhere besides that, basically.
You know what we just got? It was a Suzanne idea that I'm embracing because I don't think I have much of a choice here. She's trying to get me to cut down on how many trips I'm doing to the supermarket. And one of the ways she's doing that is we found out about this from one of our neighbors. We've got a milkman now from one of the farms. There are a lot of farms in this area. Basically, like 6:30 in the morning, the guy comes by, and you leave a cooler on your front porch.
Yes.
And he opens the cooler, and he puts in milk, and I think she got some cottage cheese for the baby, and eggs, and orange juice.
Yes, I'm aware of the concept of the milkman.
In my entire lifetime, I've never had a milkman before.
I used to love to get in the truck with the milkman when I was a kid because it was not only so cold. No, now wait a minute. What? You're making everything filthy. No, because here's what the deal with the milkman from Earler's Dairy here in Louisville. It was a deal in the 60s. If you were on the route and subscribed to the service, however, I don't know, I was 4, 5, 6 years old. I don't know how all that worked. But the milk truck with the guy with the milk and all the eggs and the fucking cottage cheese and the dairy products would come up your drive and bring us the fucking milk and all those products. And the truck was refrigerated. So when you got into it, not even in the back where all the food was, but just in where he drove, it was cool. And he would open up the door to the back and you could smell all the fucking fresh coolness of, I don't know, whatever a dairy truck smells like, a cold dairy truck. It was cool. And I used to like that. That's what I'm saying to you before you once again took us into the gutter. That's the only strange man I ever got in a truck with. And that's because my mother was standing there and said I could. But anyway, yes, but they haven't had that in years.
Well, we've got one now.
Well, you got one now. Well, you better, thankfully, you work from home. He'll have to cross you off the list because you know what they say about those milkmen.
Yeah, I think he could try another house for sure. He can't get past Swami. That's how I woke up with Swami losing his mind downstairs.
You won't have fresh cheese curds if you run the milkman off. Anyway, speaking of running off, I'm going to run off again, ladies and gentlemen. First thing Monday morning. This is the weekend. But first thing Monday morning, I'll be running off to the post office that we've been mentioning. As you know, especially if you've got skin in this game, if you've got money invested here at Cornette's Collectibles at JimCornette.com, because of the overwhelming situation in April, we closed the store on the website until next Friday, May 15th, so that we can fill this backlog of orders. We have shipped over 400 packages this past week since we did the drive-through. And we are working all weekend this weekend and shipping every day next week so that hopefully I will hit the goal of having everything filled by Friday, May 15th. It's been ordered since the last few weeks of April. Thank you, everybody, I should say, for your patience. And international orders especially, please allow plenty of time because just everything is slowed down with this. They're not guaranteeing overnight to some places. Priority mail is sometimes getting a day or two tacked on. And of course, the internationals come with a lot of paperwork on this side also, so it takes more time. But we're getting all that stuff out. But anyway, you can't spend any money with me right now, so don't try. We reopen May 15th, and I wonder if there's any way I could have some social distancing practices where I could cut it off when 20 people order something. We can just temporarily just keep everybody else in a line so I can do those and get them out before I get in a position again. We'll have to work on that. And I apologize to anybody that I actually know in person who's tried to get me on the phone or email in the past 3 or 4 weeks, because that hadn't happened either. Do you know what I did also this week for the first time since I was 8 years old?
You got into the milkman's truck?
You're going back to the milkman.
Well, you said first time since you were 8. I was trying to think what that could be.
No, also, it's another thing. I said another thing.
Oh,
I was transitioning. Here's something else that I've done for the first time. I had a do-it-yourself home haircut.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. Except when I completed my Mid-South Wrestling head shaving, I should say, with that asterisk, but that was just sort of finishing it off. But it had been like almost 3 months because was just actually due when everything shut down. And of course, and I don't, even if everything's open, it's not like I plan on going and sitting in fucking, Peggy Sue's chair at the goddamn, local barber facility, the local barbering facility anytime soon. because I don't know where the fuck she's been, and everybody's a suspect at this point in my mind. So I got it. It was too long. And of course, this is not even a paid plug, but our fine friends at Manscaped, they have some fantastic products, especially trimmers and shavers for your nether regions, but I've never applied it to the head before. And one of the problems is it doesn't have one of those big guards on it where if you were just going to shave your head, the Manscaped, the lawnmower would be fine for that, or the plow. But if you want to style it somewhat, there's not one of those guards on there to keep you from going too far because you don't know what you're doing. And I guess, honestly, if your crotch hair grows as long as the hair on your head, you shouldn't cut it anyway. You should groom it more in terms of letting it come all out, because you could be in line for a valuable cash prize or even a fucking major, high-paying job in the fetish industry. So I couldn't use the Manscaped, the lawnmower on my head. Luckily, Stacy had gotten a while back and actually ordered it on the internet, a barber kit, of clippers and the guides that come with it, because that's what she's been in between groomings cleaning up little Harley Quinn's ass with, so that she doesn't get to poopy ass. And but here's the thing: why she's
using that on your head?
Well, wait a minute. I said, now, that's which she does. She shapes it and gives her a little Kardashian butt and everything. But I said, which guard did you? Yeah, she said it was one of the shorter ones, because I wanted to keep her, shorter on her, around her little poopy hole there. So I said, all right, give me the long one anyway, is like the number 4 or whatever, which I seem to remember them bandying that number about at the haircut place. But Stace has never done it before, and I couldn't obviously see behind me. So I'm just saying, well, just take it like they do and go straight up, which they've never done that to her, being as she's not a guy getting guy haircuts. So anyway, it didn't work out too bad. I would not have been real happy if I'd paid for it. But we couldn't figure out how to make the top somewhat, because it can't be as short as the sides, or elsewise you would see all my various fucking exposures and land masses up there. So we couldn't get fancy with the scissors up there, but at least it's shorter on the sides. But I did at least go through with, because who's going to see it anyway? Then I was thinking, how bad can it be? If there was a time to be ugly or ill-kempt, these are the days to be ugly and ill-kempt. That may be a new shirt. These are the days to be ugly and ill-kempt. Who's going to notice?
Did you ever get a Flowbee?
I've heard of those things. I don't know exactly what the fucking process was. Do you know what?
Yeah, I'm not exactly sure. I remember the commercials.
It's something that hooked onto a vacuum cleaner, right?
It was some kind of vacuum apparatus that you held above your head, and I guess it would suck your hair up, and at a certain point it would cut. I don't know how the hell it worked.
Well,
to be honest with you.
I tell you, I had an experience when I was 11 with a vacuum cleaner hose, and I decided, no, never again would I have anything to do with something like that. But anyway,
I'll take the movie theater.
In the back row of the movie theater, and you could hear the thing a mile away. Oh my God. Anyway, there was a segue there to something. Oh, if you're tired of cutting your own hair, and especially the positions that you have to get into to do that, making you sore and achy and reminding you that you're not as young as you used to be, then we have a solution here for you. Because we've been talking for so long about Omax, CryoFreeze, the pain relief roll-on, the insanely popular and wildly successful pain relief formula that you can use in the privacy of your own home without going to a doctor's office, without sitting in a waiting room, having people launching fucking viruses on you. This now is a breakthrough that they have just come out with. Advanced Joint Defense, CryoFreeze Advanced Joint Defense. It's a 1-a-day supplement, a little capsule, or not a pill, a capsule, I guess that would be, or a lozenge, whatever the case may be. You take one a day. It's hemp-derived CBD, a clinically proven ingredient called NEM. It relieves joint discomfort and soreness in 7 days or less. If you have aches and pains from sore muscles, joint overuse, aging, if you want to stay more active, it's good for muscle recovery, flexibility, long-term joint health. I wish I just had short-term joint health at this point, so I'm hopping all over this stuff. But anyway, it's from the same people that are making the Omax Cryo-Freeze, Roll-On, and the Sport Cream and all the stuff we've been talking about. But this is a one-a-day supplement that can help keep you active and remove joint pain, stiffness, and all that stuff. And you can save money as usual. Limited time. We don't know how long. They won't tell us, folks, when they're going to cut this off. But assume the axe could fall at any minute. 20% off the introductory pricing on Omax Cryo-Freeze supplements and free shipping. And the discount applies toward any product site-wide through the end of this month. At least they'll tell us that. So go to omaxhealth.com, Omax, O-M-A-X, health.com, and enter the code JCE, and you will get 20% off the advanced joint defense or whatever you want to pluck from the whole thing site-wide. Basically, 7 days or less, and I'm starting now, so I'll tell you next week. But everything else works, so I believe we should trust them on this one too. So omaxhealth.com, JCE, 20% off, site-wide. Do not let muscle soreness continue to be an excuse for you not, very important, for you not living an active lifestyle. We want you to be active and living. Go to omaxhealth.com and feel relief faster.
That's right.
Well, thank you for validating all that I just said.
Those Omax roll-ons are still very popular in this house.
Oh, boy, I'll tell you what. Boy, howdy. And I'm sore all the time now, carting all these boxes around.
Any back problems? I mean, now that I think about it, I saw that picture of you. You always talk about all the packages you're mailing, and then you never really think about what it looks like. And then you had that picture of you in your hazmat suit, and it was just packages everywhere, and you had your cart. Does your back ever go out?
Oh, well, it doesn't go out because it never actually hadn't been back in a while. No, everything hurts that I have, basically. But not as bad as a lot of the boys. But I got the right shoulder is bad. I had physical therapy on the right hip years ago, but my lower back, especially cramps in certain situations, and I've got a thing that goes out somehow, and I don't want to fucking find out what that may be. And the knees are cranky at various points in time, and a lot of my stuff pops and cracks and everything.
Heyman was really smart to never take bumps, wasn't he?
Well, even when he was trying to take bumps, you couldn't actually call them bumps. Oh God, physically, Paul, that was the shortfall in his game. I may not have been Heenan, but Heyman physically was not Cornette. So imagine how much territory that takes in. Anyway, I want to read a note from a member of the cult. This is Joe. No last name. I don't want people knocking on his door wanting more stuff. Joe from Chicago. Listen to this note. Well, actually, let me set this up. I get a big box at the post office box. When I was over there mailing everything, check my box, and there's this huge package inside. And I get it home and open it up, and it's remember we were talking about how I was running low on paper towels, and then I only found the flimsy ones, whatever's. Joe sent me 2 big giant rolls of Bounty Selecticize, the real shit. The real shit. The heavy duty stuff. It's some good shit, man. 2 rolls of paper towels, and on top of them there was 2 pieces of cardboard taped together in this note on the cardboard. And it says, "Dear Jim, I grew up in southeastern Ohio, not too far from Circleville. We didn't have cable or satellite, only a few network channels broadcasting from West Virginia. Plus, my family was very religious, so I couldn't watch a lot of what was on anyway because of language. You could count on the foul-mouthed Hannibal from the A-Team saying damn or hell at least once per episode. Or no violence or sex. Somehow, though, it was okay for me to watch Dusty getting a spike in the eye, or listening to you use language that, while not profane, was nonetheless devastating, or for me to watch Sherry Martel being Sherry Martel in all her manifest womanly glory. Wrestling was a revelation. It turned out that one of my mother's friends worked with a woman whose father had wrestled before working. Let me try this again. Put the comma in the wrong place. One of my mother's friends worked with a woman whose father had wrestled before working as a veterinarian in the Columbus area. Without me even asking, the woman asked her father to sign a couple of his old photos for me. I hunted down every old wrestling VHS tape I could, and if memory serves, I once saw him in a tag match against the Fabulous Kangaroos, but otherwise he remained a mystery to me. Even now, I've only found a few of his matches on YouTube, and I've only heard him mentioned once on a podcast in passing by the Cowboy. I'm including one of the photos I received around 30 years ago as a thank you for the scaffolding and gusher and stinging wit both then and now. Best, Joe. Do you know who the veterinarian from Ohio was in the autographed picture?
Dr. Big Bill Miller?
You are correct, sir.
Wow.
As soon as I read whose father had wrestled before working as a veterinarian in Columbus, I said, this is a picture of Big Bill Miller. And I open it not only, and Joe, by the way, you do have at some point, don't hurry me on this, but you have a package coming from Cornette's Collectibles back to your address as a thank you for this. It's a Big Bill Miller rookie picture from the early 50s of him, a long, tight, smiling baby face sitting on a stool. And since I know about these things, I can testify that this is not a reproduction. It's an actual early 50s black and white publicity picture that was printed in the early 50s. And it had to be from his personal collection because of the way that this was done. The woman asked her father to sign a couple of his old photos for me. It's not like they carried this picture up and said, would you sign this? He had to go get it from the house. So this is a rookie year autographed picture of Dr. Big Bill Miller, signed Dr. Big Bill Miller from his collection. That was very cool.
Wow. Is it inscribed? Does it say F you, Buddy Rogers?
Yeah, Gotch was right, you son of a bitch. No, actually, he tried to do it in ballpoint pen, and this had to be, as this guy said, easily 30 years ago, and it was a glossy, so you can see his name. You can't really and his handwriting was not, So I'm not even sure, but it obviously had to be to Joe, but it doesn't. Joseph, I don't fucking know what it says. But anyway, the point is you can faintly see he signed it. That's another one of these guys that nobody knows how big they were because it not only the time came before national television, the modern era, but also because of it came before home video and etc. I actually got to see Big Bill Miller live once or twice and on television several times in Indianapolis. I think probably, the last time would have been in 75 probably, or 76. But when he had retired mostly from full-time wrestling and was actually a veterinarian in Columbus ain't that far from Indianapolis. And he would come over and work for Bruiser. And they had used him, obviously, because he was a huge star in the 50s and early 60s, and they had used him there in the early days of Bruiser and Snyder's promotion, I think, as a tag team champion. But by this time, 73, 74, he's mostly retired. He's, coming over to make extra money, probably doing shots for Bruiser in Indianapolis. But they would book him in an underneath match on the card, and because that's how they did their house show, they got their TVs out of. So they would have 8 or 9 underneath matches where a star would beat some schlub and a couple of main events and then one no television main event. And I don't know how they fucking drew the crowds they did for so long doing that. But anyway, because of the respect they had for him, they would always put him over. He would never do jobs, but he was never against any top guys at that point. He was just on the card. Just, I guess still into that audience, the name Big Bill Miller on the card still, made it attractive, but it also might have been just Miller and Bruiser getting along and him coming over to make some extra money. But in his day, because he wasn't an NCAA champion. He was a Big Ten champion, right?
That sounds right. I
believe so. Top wrestler at Ohio. And so he was recruited along with, Vern Gagne was one of the biggest, if not the biggest at that point, wrestling stars in the country in 1950, 51, 52, with the national TV out of Chicago. And Vern had been an NCAA champion. So it was obviously something that they would do to look for shooters. And Bill Miller was 6'5", 260 when most people in the NFL weren't that big. So he was huge, and he'd been a great amateur wrestler. So they brought him in, and he was obviously booked to be a star because of his background, but he was a star for a lot longer than he would have been if he wasn't any good. By the time I saw him, let's say 45, and he's a semi-retired veterinarian, so in a fucking underneath match in Indianapolis. Wasn't setting the world on fire, but he was big and athletic in his day, and he was over and main evented, a lot of different fucking places, and was big in the Midwest, and was a big guy, not only for Sheik, for Bruiser in Indianapolis, Sheik in Detroit and Ohio, but Barnett in the whole Midwest territory.
Bruno used to always talk about working with him.
Yeah, as well, he worked up there. He worked a lot more with Bruno in Pittsburgh, did he not, than in the WWF itself? I think. Just off the top of my head, because I didn't research his bio for this. But I'm just making Joe happy for the cool picture he sent me. But anyway, but what a fuck, it had a great heel face and heel sneer and that fucking burr haircut. And I never met him in person, but I knew his brother Danny fairly well from working with him. Danny Miller was still running Greenville, South Carolina when we first came to work for Crockett in '85. And I think it wasn't until the next year that Sandy Scott took over. I think Danny had moved back to Florida. I believe it seems something. I remember something about that. But anyway, Danny, his little brother and younger brother, was a wrestler also, but had worked the Carolinas a ton and had settled there and was over with that audience, so became an office local promoter and did some of the towns, and he was real nice guy. And then he had another brother that didn't wrestle as long, but was almost as big, I think, as Bill, who was Ed, right? Ed Miller. And he didn't make it out of the 50s. Help me. Was that his name?
I don't know too much about Ed Miller. No.
Wait a minute. You don't know that? Okay, mark it down, folks, in your little black books, wherever you keep them. That I stumped Brian Last, the third Miller brother. There was Bill, there was Danny, and there was Ed Miller. And I want somebody to tweet me a picture of Ed Miller and tag old Brian Last on it and rub his face in it.
All right.
There you go. Finally. Talking about outthinking the Fink. You ought to call yourself Brain Last. Sometimes people write that to me. Will you tell your co-host Brain Last?
Yeah, that's the funniest thing. I get that every now and then too. And it's like, you realize you're putting me over when you say that.
But anyway, that Dr. Big Bill Miller, a big star in wrestling, Georgia, Florida. I'm sure he worked at one point almost everywhere.
And then I guess the story goes that him and Karl Gotch either felt they were or were legitimately blackballed by Buddy Rogers in Ohio when he was NWA champion. And then they went to an Al Haft show and got even with him in the dressing room.
Well, now, were they on the card that night, or did they just show up?
I don't know if they were on the card that night.
They just showed up. I always thought that it was a skirmish, but that they were all on the card. If they specifically showed up, well, no wonder Buddy was trying to get the fuck out of there. But yeah, that was which one? Gotch confronted him, but Miller actually slammed the door, right?
I don't know who slammed the door. Hold on, actually, I just found something right here, and this was posted by Tim Hornbaker, a reputable source if there ever was one. It's quotes from Bill Miller, I guess, from 1988. Carl and I were working the Outlaw promotions in Columbus, Ohio, because Buddy Rogers had gotten us blackballed when he was the NWA champion. Rogers came to Columbus for a match with one of his traveling partners, Johnny Berend, and Al Haft was dumb enough to give Carl and I tickets to the show. Haft was a weasel who liked to stir up trouble amongst the wrestlers, and he probably figured he'd see some action if Carl and I confronted Rogers. So we go backstage to talk to Rogers about the blacklist. We find him, and he's obviously nervous when he sees us, which he should have been, because Rogers couldn't wrestle a lick and was certainly no match for either one of us. We told him that we wanted the blacklist lifted, and he's nodding his head and going, sure, 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 and trying to walk away. I stopped him, I put my hand on his chest, and told him, if you don't get us off the list, we'll make it impossible for you to work this area. We'll go to the newspapers and the TV stations all across the territory and tell them you're scared of us. We'll force a match. The next time you come to Columbus, you'll have to wrestle me or Carl, and you know how that'll go. Rogers was still nodding his head, refusing to look me in the eyes, and he's still saying, sure, 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 and edging away. So I slapped him hard just to get his attention. Rogers ran back to his dressing room and Carl followed him. He slapped Rogers once, maybe twice, and that was it. Rogers was bawling like a baby. He wouldn't fight either one of us, so we just left. There were a lot of witnesses, so I'm not sure where the story came from that we intentionally broke his arm by slamming the door on it. It might have happened when Rogers ran back to the dressing room and was trying to keep Carl out. But if that's when it happened, it certainly wasn't on purpose. Knowing Rogers, I'm not even sure his arm was ever broken. It always sounded to me like an excuse not to work that night. He just wanted to get out of town. And this is from a 1988 conversation, I guess, with Bill Miller, posted by Tim Hornbaker.
But, well, the only problem with it actually not being a broken arm is in all the other towns, he missed, 6 weeks?
And was right? It his arm or was it his...
I think it was his wrist, I think. And, well, the thing is, he missed that time in all those other towns that Gotch and Miller wouldn't have been in. And the NWA was highly pissed. So I guarantee you I'm sure that sounds like the wrestler's way of telling it. Yeah, he slammed the door on his arm. But actually, it's understandable that if you're trying to keep fucking Carl Gotch out of the goddamn door and he's trying to get in, that your wrist may go in the process. So I can believe that. But, anyway, but thank you for the picture, Joe. And the reminiscences of Dr. Big Bill Miller.
Who had a more fascinating 2-year period of time than Buddy Rogers from 61 to 63?
Boy, from the penthouse to the outhouse, from the NWA World Champion to out of the business, and potentially with heart trouble.
Potentially with heart trouble.
Potentially. And it's...
Hornbaker's doing the book. He's working on it right now. Hopefully it'll be out, relatively soon. I can't wait to hear. He's one of the preeminent wrestling historians. He does great research. I can't wait to finally read the true Buddy Rogers story.
And I have to believe he had heart trouble because the biggest star in the business and one of the 3 highest paid wrestlers in the business doesn't just quit everything for a few years, which is what he did. And then a brief comeback and then go away for another couple years and a brief comeback and just never really, there had to be something going on with his health. And he was only 43, 44, something like that. So there had to be something going on. But of course, like everything else in wrestling, it's probably been romanticized that, they had to drag him out of the hospital after a heart attack to do the job for Bruno. And even if he didn't want to come back and do any more jobs or not be the guy in the Northeast, wouldn't he have gone somewhere and done something in the next 3 years as hot as he was and the money he was used to making if he could?
Yeah, then he just pops up at the end of the decade randomly in Detroit.
Yeah.
Of all places. It's really weird. It's a fascinating story. Whatever Buddy Rogers, whatever really happened, there's so many myths around him.
And then 10 years later in the Carolinas. But he did that for George Scott and probably and help Flair, or at least to help George Scott help Flair. But nevertheless, So can Tim Hornbaker just come and tell us stories?
I wish, yeah.
Speaking of whistleblowers in wrestling, there's a whistleblower. The Crispy Cruiser, Chris Cruz, the Baron of Baltimore. Something happens up there in that city, by God, he's going to have something to say about it. Got AEW fined $10,000 by the Maryland State Athletic Commission. Is this what I'm hearing and being led to understand?
This is indeed what happened. You may remember there was a pay-per-view event. I forget the name of it. They all kind of sound the same. A while back, a big wild brawl between Jon Moxley and Kenny Omega. A match that was truly atrocious. And they introduced a lot of weaponry into the match. There was blood. There was all sorts of gimmicks.
Well, and remember, they still cut each other up for real, but at the same time, they had fake blood on top of that, and they had the gimmicks were real, and another, the netting of barbed wire was gimmick, and it was all, I don't know what the fuck.
So the match takes place, and after it ended, a lot of people had the reaction you and I had, which was, this is awful, and we picked it apart. Some people did like it. And then apparently Chris Cruz went a different route and decided to file a formal complaint, I guess, with the Maryland State Athletic Commission, saying that it violated, I guess, the rules and regulations for which they govern professional wrestling. Does that sound right?
Yeah, well, yes, yeah, because Maryland has a strict athletic commission, and sometimes that's for good and other times for bad. But in this case, it was very very useful for the. I don't know why Chris was so upset. Otherwise, that he was like everybody else that watched it. He was just offended as a wrestling fan that they would do this fucking goofy bullshit. But yes, the Maryland Commission it frowns on these things.
Well, we actually have the complaint. Well, I guess not the complaint, the actual
the ruling,
the consent order, the ruling.
Well, we should share some of this. I'm looking for this. I have this now.
Well, before you get to that, I'm just curious. Beyond the state of Maryland, have you ever encountered anything like this in the past where someone, either a fan or, someone who was once involved in the business, made a complaint about a wrestling promotion and the state actually acted on it? Did that ever happen? Well, Kentucky, I guess. Now that I think about it, you may have had those issues.
Well, yes. They fined Tim Gonderman, who was the wrestling inspector for the State Athletic Commission at this was the early 2000s. The WWE had a pay-per-view in Lexington at Rupp Arena as Triple H against somebody, and right in front of Tim, who was there on the scene as the inspector from the commission, Triple H got juice and just evidently bled from asshole to appetite. And he went crazy because it's like having a cop standing there and breaking the law right in front of him. And, he didn't want to be a prick and stop the fucking pay-per-view match, but he blew his fucking top about it. And he recommended to the state capitol in Frankfurt that they not only fine them, but that they pull the WWE's promoter's license because it was so egregious. It wasn't like, well, we didn't know, or there wasn't anybody there. We didn't think we thought we could get by with it or whatever. It's just they did it right in front of him when they knew they weren't supposed to. So that's why that led to, they ended up fining them $10,000. And that's why they didn't have a WWE television taping or pay-per-view in Kentucky for 14 years or whatever the stretch was until we got the fucking idiot Republican governor that thankfully we've gotten rid of now that, changed a bunch of regulations as they all do. And as part of that, they came back and did some TVs, but that happened there in promotional wars back when more states had commissions. You constantly had one side calling a stooge the other side. And there's been modern day examples of that, like, when all the independent wars, the Dennis Corluzzo versus the world in the 90s in New Jersey, you'd have a bunch of people calling buildings or calling commissions or stooging shit and various things.
That's right.
So, that's happened a bunch, but notably with this amount of money, there was a $10,000 fine on the WWE for Kentucky. And, Oregon would have done things like that if they had more wrestling after they got that real strict commission in the 90s. But that's why the Vince stayed away from there for 10 years or whatever more. And sometimes the commission, mostly back in the days when, especially the southern state commissions, where you had one company that was running every major town in the state every week, that when the Tennessee had a commission, they would obviously they would still take the money from Nick Goulas and Roy Welch or Jerry Jarrett, but they would favor them against any outlaws, or any other southern state or a state where they had an incumbent promotion. In Texas, they had they called it the Department of Licensing, I think. But you would always favor the established office against the outlaws, which sometimes you couldn't do it publicly or quite overtly, because that would get the athletic commission and the government involved in one of the antitrust lawsuits. But it was actually for the better. Once again, it's one of those things that you can't do, but it was for the better of the business, because the commissions knew. For example, the Kentucky State Athletic Commission knew that Christine Jarrett was going to run a show 52 times a year in the Louisville Gardens, and the gate was going to be at least 10 grand. What's 5% of 10 grand? 500. They're going to get $500 52 times a year just for Louisville. So are they going to go out of their way for, especially for some ragtag outlaw group that was trying to come in and get preferential dates or get dates in an arena or whatever the fuck? No, because that's just going to, in the long run, muddy the water, and it's going to be less tax revenue. Because the outlaws in those days never won the war. They just fucked up wrestling for a while in that particular territory. The only outlaw that I can think of that ever won a wrestling war was Jerry Jarrett taking Memphis from Goulas, and that was obviously, for reasons we've discussed on this program, seamless in some places and almost effortless in others, but it could not have been replicated anywhere else. And Jarrett, because he had been established as part of that company, wasn't even really the outlaw in that side. He was still running his own towns. So it just, anyway, yeah, these fucking commissions. But anyway, this particular complaint, this is like a 3-page thing that the Athletic Commission in Maryland issued a statement. But listen to this. Just listen and imagine that you're just somebody reading this in the newspaper, if it was excerpted, or just you're a person who doesn't know anything about wrestling and you're reading this. On November 9, 2019, during a professional wrestling match held in an event at the Royal Farms Arena, presented and promoted by the respondent, both Mr. Good and Mr. Smith, that's Moxley and Olivier, respectively, both Mr. Good and Mr. Smith introduced foreign objects into the ring, including a baseball bat wrapped in barbed wire, a broom with bristles wrapped in barbed wire, and a tool similar to an ice pick. Mr. Good used the baseball bat wrapped in barbed wire to strike Mr. Smith 3 times across his back and cause lacerations from which Mr. Smith bled. Mr. Smith used the broom with bristles wrapped in barbed wire to strike Mr. Good across the back of his head and his shoulder and cause lacerations from which Mr. Good bled. Mr. Smith also raked the broom across Mr. Good's back while Mr. Good was lying face down, and twice stomped on the broom after placing the broom on Mr. Good's back. The respondent that's AEW, was responsible for the acts of Mr. Smith and Mr. Good, or Mr. Smith and Mr. Jones, or Dr. Tar and Professor Feather, whoever these fucking clown show fucking, it just sounds so stupid. So then, hold on here, I'm trying to get this second page here, where, God damn it won't keep coming up here. Stay there. Why can't I get it? There. Was it no, it's not even the second page that I wanted. It's the third page, God damn it. That's the third page. Where the file?
Page 2, number 5.
Page 2, number 5. That's yeah. Thank you for jumping in there. Page 2, number 5. Okay. The commission acknowledges that while AEW took precautions to reduce the potential for injury to both Mr. Good and Mr. Smith by using materials in certain instances to simulate injury and merely give the appearance of bleeding, blood was introduced into the ring in other instances during this professional wrestling match through the deliberate and repeated actions of the two referenced wrestlers as scripted by AEW. So because they couldn't just go out there and have a fucking match like two goddamn professionals would and have wild and crazy and fucking ringside and stuff, they have to do the barbed wire and the stupid shit. And there's a way, which we'll talk about in a second, they could have got around a little bit of blood without all of the fucking unsavoriness and the ice picks, because they have to do that and go out there. And as we mentioned, it was ridiculous. The point to which they went in this match was just stupid. The barbed wire broom for Olivier to clean up with. They do this. It comes to the attention of the Athletic Commission, a government body which has to fucking blister a wrestling promotion for being fucking stupid and doing stupid shit. And in the paperwork that they mentioned, they said not only do they call it real and phony at the same time, it's phony, and they did part of the damage they did to each other was real, even though it was supposed to be a phony match. But nobody believed that the match was real because all the fans in the arena knew it was supposed to be phony because it was phony. But they did real damage to each other while they were being phony. So does a document like this do any good for the public image of professional wrestling, which is now apparently both real and phony for an audience of people who know it's all phony?
Well, Chris Cruz posted something. I think it looks like from what I'm seeing here, this was from his Facebook page. Let me read this to you real quick. Look. The easy thing to say in response to the $10,000 fine levied at AEW by the Maryland State Athletic Commission is that it is pocket change for a billionaire. I get that. But it ain't nothing. And it is public, or will be on May 20th when the commission meets and then posts a consent order on its website and distributes it to all other commissions throughout the country. And keep in mind that the next violation will result in a revocation of their license in Maryland and possible show stoppage. In the middle of a match. Yeah, that's just a sentence there. I don't know if that was part of the previous one or the next one. The commission is on notice now that others are watching its actions. This puts AEW on notice as well, and it embarrasses the company. By the time tomorrow, this story will have spread far and wide. By this time tomorrow, the story will have spread far and wide, and it will appear in mainstream publications. This is a black eye for AEW and for the business.
I agree. Because it's stupid to do that shit. And, we've talked about stories before when Jerry Lawler and Terry Funk at the Louisville Gardens were having the big double juice fucking pull apart with 16 guys trying to separate them in chaos, and the commissioner coming down with his tie up all around his neck. Stop it, the match is over. And Lawler's, well, if you think it's over, you get your ass in here and try to stop it, right? That was, fortunately, it was a one-man fucking operation, the State Athletic Commission back in those days, and Christine Jarrett calmed him down by giving him the grip and saying, hey, we'll promote the wrestling and you collect the taxes. But when they, especially in the modern era, these commissions don't want to be fucked with publicly. And they could have done a street fight around the ring with fucking garbage can lids and all of their little toys and everything and gotten away with it. And they could have possibly negotiated with the commission for something with blood in it, especially if they'd agreed to go to the finish right afterwards. But instead, they just do shit that they know that they're not supposed to do, which is bleed in Maryland as well. And they had real blood because they couldn't refrain from using stupid fucking gimmicks that won't work with you and that they didn't know how to use to begin with. And then they were going to try to cover it with they had the fake blood for the commission, but they really bled also. And it was just so distasteful and stupid when you get to, and unbelievable and silly when you get to barbed wire baseball bats and barbed wire netting and fucking all these glass panes and all the fucking props and shit. It was ridiculous. And then didn't they fucking end it with a fucking suplex off the goddamn space shuttle or something? That's when you get attention, and it's distasteful to people. That's why I tried to make sure that we cut down all that goddamn Kevin Steen, El Generico, ladder, Home Depot building fucking structures in the middle of the ring so you can take bumps through tables and chairs. Fiasco shit in Ring of Honor. It would have never been sold to Sinclair Broadcasting. Because state athletic commissions don't like that shit, and neither do major broadcasting companies. Except, unfortunately, TNT has gotten in bed with apparently a goddamn old ECW mark that is trying to promote this shit, literally promote it in his company. The thing with Flair and Luger in Maryland at the Great American Bash 88, they tried to make a finish around the Maryland Athletic Commission law, which was still a law at that point, or was already a law at that point. No blood. So what they did was they had Luger about to have Flair beat. He would have him in the torture rack. Flair would be moments from submitting, but Luger would have gotten juice, and the referee would stop it on account of the commission demanded the blood be stopped, or because the match be stopped because of the blood. The problem was Luger had seldom, if ever, bladed before and was scared of it and got what we used to call a pap smear in the business. And there was barely a fucking trickle, and you couldn't even see it in the back row. And you couldn't see it in fucking ringside, much less the back row of the bleachers. So when they stopped it, the people fucking hated it. They didn't get it, and it put heat on the commission, and et cetera, et cetera. It was just, they wanted some heat on the commission instead of the promotion. Crockett and Dusty and everybody did, because, better to have heat on them than us, but it got heat on everybody because it just didn't work because there was no blood or not enough blood. But I don't know why Chris is so fucking mad at them in general, but I love it when he gets cranky. That's one guy. I've never had a crossword with Chris Cruz. We've worked together before in the past and talked to each other, and you would think two of the crankier individuals in wrestling would have been cranky with each other. I did commentary with him down in Dyersburg, Tennessee at the Herb Welch WrestlePlex about 4 years ago for an NWA show for a video they were doing. And it was so fucking inordinately hot that day, both inside and outside, that we were both wearing suits. And I think I ended up as skinny as he was by the time when we started. By the time we were finished, I sweated so bad. But I've never had any issues with the crispy one.
It is a little weird, though. I mean, just the whole, if this happens again, their license will be revoked and other states will be notified. Like, it does seem, people accuse you of having an agenda against AEW.
Sounds like somebody crapped in Crispy's Post Toasties, doesn't it?
Yeah. I mean, like I said, it's one thing to watch that and then talk about it and dismantle it and rip it apart because it deserves to be. It's another thing to go and trying to cost AEW money. I don't know. It's rather curious.
But you know what? If it's not somebody in the wrestling business, it's going to be somebody outside the wrestling business. But that's the thing. When you do stupid shit like that, people are going to notice. And there's no reason for it, which we'll get into later on.
Hey, Bash 89, Flair Funk. That night ends with Flair covered in blood, as well as Muda's mist. And a brawl all around the arena. Did the commission have anything to say about that?
Come to think of it.
Right?
I don't know whether they did or not. It may have had a new commissioner.
Flair was red and green from the mist and the blood.
Cruz was there that night.
I don't know. I don't know if he started with WCW already by that point. He may have started after that.
I don't know. But it's another one of those things that makes you go, I don't know. Rick probably just went into business for himself. He needed to bleed, let's face it. And probably at that point, they thought, well, fuck, they sold out this show, and it's the only fucking sellout we've had for a fucking year, so maybe we better not fuck with them.
And Pennsylvania was J.J. Binns, correct?
Yes. Oh, at the Bash 86, when Wahoo's blade, the tip of his blade broke off in his fucking head. And he went back in the fucking bathroom and the locker rooms and squeezed his head like he was squeezing a zit, and the blade popped out and hit the fucking mirror. And JJ Benz was like, fuck, he was going to stop the show because there was so much blood. But they said, you can't do this. This is a fucking veteran stadium. Look at all those people out there. They'll fucking riot. There better not be any more blood. And then there wasn't. But it killed the show. People wanted to see. That's why that Philadelphia and Baltimore actually were swaying toward the Crockett side, if not dead. Well, we took Baltimore from Vince, and they went to the Capitol Center in Landover. And Philadelphia was neck and neck, and sometimes the only reason why they would outdo us because they had the bigger building. Because it had been so long since they hadn't ever seen NWA-style bloody real wrestling up there, but they had seen bloody wrestling back in the old 60s and 70s days, but they had never seen wild-ass Southern shit, and that's why we were taking the towns away. Because people were buying this shit, and they wanted to see the blood and the violence and the cowboy boots and the mayhem, especially opposite ice cream bars. So it was neck and neck at that. But there was a lot of blood at the Bash, I will say that. But Philadelphia liked to see blood. They did love their blood.
So, in like the Smoky Mountain days, did you ever have to deal with the Tennessee State Athletic Commission? I'm thinking of the Jericho incident at the Night of Legends, where I've never seen anyone bleed that much live. No,
Tennessee didn't have a commission by that point.
Oh, okay.
The Tennessee commission was, they may still do something with boxing, but you still pay a tax to the state. But as far as an active commission, that was abolished in Tennessee years ago. We had to work with Kentucky as the athletic commission for our Kentucky towns, but they never sent anybody because, they didn't have that many inspectors to begin with. And secondly, they knew what the fuck we were doing. And anytime we never got juice, there wasn't even a juice. There wasn't a rule against juice in Kentucky at that point in time because Ian Rotten hadn't done these garbage shows up here and gotten heat on wrestling by that point. So we could get juice or do whatever we wanted as long as everybody was licensed and we sent the fucking check in. Otherwise than that, there was no way. And Virginia, but that was the same thing. Those small towns in Virginia, we weren't running Richmond. Nobody ever came from the commission. We submitted a report with the fucking attendance, the gate, and the fucking tax check. And everybody was licensed.
With this AEW story, I don't know who's on the Maryland State Athletic Commission. I'm picturing a bunch of old guys. It may not be that. Yeah. Can you imagine someone puts the video in? Right. Someone puts the video in and there's Omega and Moxley laying in the web of barbed wire.
Oh, yeah. Well, because they remember. Think about this. Baltimore is where Billy Graham beat Bruno Sammartino for the belt in, 78?
That's right.
And Graham was covered in blood. They remember that kind of bloody wrestling. They
77.
Don't remember. 77, sorry. All right, he got even with me for what I fucking stumped Ed Miller. Anyway, Graham was covered in blood, but there wasn't baseball bats and barbed wire and broken glass and just stupid, outlandish shit, so they would have to be out of their minds. Oh, yeah. But most people would be, because who wants to see that shit? It's fucking stupid. It's not only, it's the fans that have grown up and seen the ECW bullshit and the fucking modern hardcore indie bullshit, but it's also the boys that grew up watching that ECW horse shit and being impressed by that as something that should be emulated instead of, do they still have grunge music? If we don't have to have grunge music anymore, why do we still have to have ECW hardcore style bullshit?
You brought up a good point there. Do you think the Maryland State Athletic Commission should have stepped in and reversed the title change because Billy Graham's feet were on the ropes?
Well, that was, that went back to the old days of, do you really reverse the referee's call or use the instant replay? They were talking about it in basketball, baseball, everything. It was really a whole controversy at the time. Yeah, the guy can bleed practically out, but when his feet were on the ropes, fuck it. That's too much. But anyway, thank you, Crispy Cruiser, for standing up for the integrity of wrestling in Baltimore, regardless of how fucking pissy you may be when you do it. Have you noticed now we also have Murder Hornets? And I'm thinking that should be a good name at some point for a tag team. Murder Hornets, maybe against the Social Distancers. Or the Murder Hornets, maybe two of these little fucks in the Dork Order.
We also have an Arctic Vortex.
Oh, well, the Arctic Vortex moving. That's what's causing the cold. It's gonna frost here Saturday morning in Louisville, right? Frost in Louisville in the middle of May. Arctic Vortex would be a great finish. Hit him with the Arctic Vortex, put him on ice, right? Like they put Matt Hardy's career on ice on this All Elite show we'll talk about in a minute. But Murder Hornets. First, we have a pandemic. A lunatic, babbling, incoherent fool is president of the United States. Now we've got Murder Hornets. 2 inches fucking long. Have you seen the pictures of these things?
I have, yeah.
They're fucking, they're as big as your middle finger, but they're a hornet when it stings you. Apparently, it's like a railroad spike penetrating your flesh, and they're going to kill all the honeybees in the next 2 years unless we do something, which, of course, we won't, because if anything's going to go bad with the environment, it's going to happen because Trump does nothing to help the environment. So it's now we're going to have to tell the kids and grandkids, well, you should have remembered what honey used to taste like. It was great when we used to have honey. The fuck? I don't want to go outside. I want more social distancing. I want at least 35 feet and plexiglass in between me and everything. Are you going to go out and get a fucking deadly virus? Or are you going to go out and be stung by a murder hornet with the fucking Spider-Man eyes? You could make up something like that. I mean, I know anything looks goddamn fearsome if you magnify it 500 times, but these fuckers are ugly and look like they have a bad attitude. I don't want to go anywhere in public anymore from now on for the next 3 or 4 years. If you watch the news today or just read about what's going on or just talk about it like I'm doing now and getting myself more wound up, you need therapy. You need some kind of counseling just to deal with fucking life. Any ideas?
Well, our friends at BetterHelp could probably slide right in there.
That's what I was looking for. That's exactly what I was. No, seriously, if you need somebody to talk to, and especially if you're quarantined and you live alone and you can't browbeat your significant other or vent to them, at this point, BetterHelp. I don't want to say it's not a urgent problem or a severe problem. Some people obviously have major problems, but this could be a problem. The whole world is crumbling. We've got lunatics in charge of the government. We've got murder hornets. We've got whatever the fuck else we've got. Pandemics. You know, maybe you need somebody to talk to. We've had so many testimonials from different listeners, members of the cult of Cornette out there that have tried this and it works. If you don't have access to therapy, if you don't want to go out in public for therapy, whatever the case may be, this can be done online securely. On the phone, video, etc., and with licensed and professional counselors involved. A broad range of expertise that may not be locally available in all areas or many areas or whatever. It's worldwide, just like the internet is. You can log on to your account anytime. You get timely and thoughtful responses. You can schedule weekly video or phone sessions. And it's an easier way than having to go out in the cold, cruel world to vent about the cold, cruel world. So we can save you money. Go to BetterHelp, HELP, BetterHelp.com/JCE, and you'll get 10% off your first month. BetterHelp.com/JCE. And join 800,000 people or more taking charge of their mental health with the help of an experienced professional. And they are running a special on murder hornets this week. I've heard about this. Have you read about this?
I have not, but I will say that in the last couple of weeks, I have seen more people get in touch with you and me on social media or via email, specifically asking about BetterHelp. What's the link? What's the code? What do we use? So obviously a lot of people out there right now are looking for someone to talk to.
And 30% off this week if you have PTSD from murder hornets.
Hey, you know who maybe
I just made that up.
Yeah, I don't think that's an actual deal, so please.
Yeah. Don't ask for that deal.
It's almost as bad as when you said our sponsor's cereal had cocaine in it this past week. But listen, you know who made
that's some tasty shit. Oh, that is some tasty shit. It actually when I had a handful of that stuff, it gave me energy and kind of put my appetite off a little bit too. So
You know who may need someone to talk to? Vince McMahon after the ratings for Raw came out. Did you see the ratings?
Oh, well, I heard they were feeling puny, is what I heard.
Yeah, that's a nice way of putting it. It was the least amount of viewers, I believe, in the history of Monday Night Raw.
Well, the thing is, I can understand All Elite has their diehard audience. It's the ECW cult thing again for however many of those people that there were. And, they supported the company no matter what. These people are going to support the company no matter what. NXT has that same kind of dynamic where they've about hit, the people. We just got to watch this show, even if there is no fans and under the conditions that have prevailed. But Raw and SmackDown, I don't think I'm not feeling that love from their general public anymore that they got to stick with them through fair means or foul. And also those shows that we've seen, we quit a few weeks ago or whatever, but the ones that we saw were so sterile and quiet and just they didn't have the atmosphere to pull it off. It just wasn't exciting. Well, they weren't exciting with people. When we were watching Raw, that was the longest 3 hours of my life when there was people in the building.
Yeah.
But there's not enough life to it because it's so clean and so sterile. And I'm not trying to do a pun on the pandemic, but it just without anybody yelling and making any kind of noise, being in a building with visible empty seats when they tried that whole fucking thing. And it just is so, I can understand why the bigger shows, because they had further to fall. Because let's be honest, the people watching NXT, as we've said, mostly they are the ones hoping for the NXT revolution. And that's how many of them there are. And the All Elite fans past the first couple of weeks, we said there's between 600 and 800 or so thousand of them. And only a few of those have dropped off because they were all diehard people that wanted to watch that show to begin with. It wasn't like they were watching because it had a history of being so good for so long, like the Raw and SmackDown viewers. I say so good, but in comparison, in the days of Steve Austin and The Rock, right? Raw was exciting at one point. SmackDown was too. A lot of those people may be going, well, fuck, this just ain't what it used to be. With All Elite Wrestling, they knew what it was going to be, and whatever it is, they're going to watch it anyway. So I can see why AEW and NXT, that's their core audiences that are going to watch no matter what. Raw and SmackDown has to impress somebody because of their track record and because there's many more people watching them, or at least there was to begin with, and they're going to have further to fall because they're going to lose. A lot of those people weren't, I'll stick with you through anything, Raw. I mean, does that make sense?
It makes a lot of sense. AEW, everyone is taking a hit across the board. AEW has gotten to a point now where it looks, I hate to use the word steady, but it's within a range where you kind of have an idea, what the high range is and the low range is, and all things being equal, it's rather respectable considering the times we're in. Could make the same argument to an extent about NXT, but Raw and SmackDown, their ratings are in a free fall. People are tuning out in record numbers. Just so you know, because we're talking about this, I don't know if you know the number. The average this past week for Raw was 1.68 million people. Now that's extraordinary. That's the lowest ever.
Well, because they haven't even been good empty shows.
But that's the thing. It's like, there's one thing to say, well, the pandemic's happening. Obviously, people have priorities and, to watch maybe the news or something else. But you're also putting on awful programming in the midst of this. So the people who would actually say, let me give this a chance, they're going, I can't make it through 3 hours of this garbage. And they're turning it off. I've tried. I knew we weren't going to review it, but I said, let me see what's going on. I can't make it through any of that. It's awful.
I'm just telling you. I don't know what the answer is for the WWE as long as they are trying to embrace that they're still producing this thing like a network television show. You've got to almost get regional sports level with something like I said, the perfect, and we'll talk about this in a minute when we talk about the television show that they did the other night. But AEW, I don't even like Daly's place. It's open. It's big. There's so many empty seats. It's outdoors. The sound you don't get the reverberation off the roof. What was it? QT Marshall's wrestling school dressed up? That was the answer. With just kind of like a fight gym type of thing and some wise ass loudmouths, just enough to make some noise in the audience. That was the atmosphere for empty arena wrestling. I didn't like Daly's place, even though they put crew people and they had more people involved. It was a goddamn giant open air amphitheater. You could see that it was daylight. You've got to AEW. I hate to give them this, and I'll take plenty away later on. They found the one thing that works the most is when you have a small building like that and make it kind of like the Fight Club thing or the old episodes of The Ultimate Fighter, where they were having the fights with just the fighters, but it worked. That worked. These big buildings and all these empty seats, whatever, it doesn't fucking work. What do you think?
I don't know. I like Daly's place. I thought it worked all right. I did really like QT Marshall's gym. I thought that was really good. But, another thing is, for the good and bad of AEW, you watch that and you realize you're watching a wrestling show in the midst of a pandemic. They talk about it.
Yeah.
They reference what's actually happening in society. The WWE show, they can't say the words COVID-19. They don't talk about the coronavirus. They don't act like this is happening in the world where...
Wait a minute. Why not? This is news to me. What?
I don't know. For the same reason they don't mention Roman Reigns all of a sudden. I don't know. I don't know why they do any of the things. It's the weird whims of, what do we call him now in the drive-thru? Rich weirdo, Vince McMahon, and his, stooges like Bruce Pritchard who tell him that he has good ideas. They're doing everything wrong. They're doing everything to drive away people and to not even acknowledge what's happening in the world.
How can they you don't have to beat it to death, but how can they not acknowledge, boy, there's no fans here because, of course, we're in the middle of a pandemic and everybody in the world knows this is happening.
Because, again, it's the same show that talks to you and I like we're children. It's the same show that has a Possum King. It's the same promotion that thinks wrestling fans are idiots. They will only like what we tell them to like. Even if they like something else, we won't accept it because we're smarter than them. Let's treat them like they're children. Let's talk down to them. Let's condescend to them. That's the corporate philosophy there. Again, for the good and bad of AEW, they don't just completely insult your intelligence on commentary or with the tone of the show. Some of the things on the show, we can talk about that, I'm sure we will in a moment, but...
Yes, we keep teasing that.
But they treat the audience like the audience may be adults.
You know what my favorite minute of television every week is now?
Your favorite minute of television?
My favorite 1 minute of television every week.
Limu, Emu, and Doug?
And Doug. No. Me TV. Fucking Limu, Emu, and Doug. And Naomi. Me TV. On Saturday night, Monday morning, or Sunday night, Monday morning, I should say, has been airing reruns of Mission Impossible. And they have been in the first season. And I've been recording them, but I do not watch the television show. I just watch the open. Because the first season of Mission Impossible, and I think they're up to episode 18, hopefully another 15 weeks or so, and they'll get to season 2. Because season 1 there was no Peter Graves. You know this, right?
Yeah.
There was no Mr. Phelps, no Peter Graves. It was this fucking guy named Stephen Hill that played Mr. Oh God, what's his name? Briggs or something. I don't know, whatever the fuck. But anyway, Mission Impossible, iconic television program. Remembered to this day. This tape will self-destruct in 5 seconds, but the first season was fucking rotten because Stephen Hill was fucking rotten. He had no emotion. He had no fucking personality. Nobody had ever heard of him before. They signed him to play the lead. So after the first season, they got a hit show. They've got a big show that they put a lot of money into, but it hadn't been a hit because their lead sucks. So they ixnay him. They replace him with Peter Graves. And off they go, and now they're iconic. But they still had the same theme music, Lalo Schifrin. And I listened to that music. And also they pioneered the music video because every week on the open, when they light the fuse on the bomb, was a different music video to the theme with action and scenes from that night's program. So when I was a kid and used to watch Mission Impossible, it was all about foreign intrigue and impersonations and toppling foreign governments and blah, blah, blah. And I didn't get that. But I loved the fucking music, and I like to see the fucking video. So the opening of Mission Impossible, the first 1 minute, is my favorite. And, of course, that's the greatest television theme song of all time. I mean, it just...
Well, I don't know about that.
You just... No, oh, God. You tell me something that tops the incredible funkified funkiness of Lalo Schifrin's Mission Impossible theme.
Are we talking about only themes that are funky or serious, or do we also add in theme songs that may have good lyrics?
Well, I'm talking about in this case.
I'll take different strokes.
It's an instrumental. What different strokes?
That's a great, catchy little song.
Oh,
Alan
for
Thicke wrote
fuck!
that.
Yeah, I felt like I'd catch crotch rot when I hear that fucking. That's ridiculous.
Barney Miller.
Okay, nothing to write home about, but all right. What about the fucking first 2 seasons of Lost in Space?
Yeah.
Oh, for heaven's sake. Well, anyway.
I'm not a big fan of the black and white Lost in Space in season 1 with the more evil Dr. Smith. I like it when he became more of a...
Oh, now, see, you're
more
exactly...
of a goofy foil than just overtly evil.
That's when they started WWF and everything up. In the first season, when he was an evil foreign spy, it was like the NWA. And by the third season, they're fighting the fucking carrot monster, and it's the WWF.
Oh, dear.
Oh, my back is a disaster area. Anyway, everybody should listen to the Mission Impossible theme and then write you and tell you that that's the greatest piece of music, especially the instrumental piece of music that's ever introed a television program.
You like Dragnet?
Oh, a Dragnet's classic, but it's not a piece of music of the standard of Mission Impossible, especially with the fucking conga drums in the middle there and everything.
You know what? I think maybe my problem is that song is overexposure.
Oh, you can't hear it enough. I listen to it every day. It keeps me going.
Every day.
Every day. I've taped the show. I just listen to the first minute over and over again. Anyway, speaking of listening to the first minute over and over again, which people apparently probably that's the way they think this show's going. Real quick programming note. The drive-through next week will not be on Monday. Is this correct? It will be Tuesday, May the 12th, because we are going to do a review of Money in the Bank.
Yes, the Money in the Bank that'll be taking place apparently at Titan Tower. A race to the top. I feel like Dom DeLuise should be in this film. A race to the top of Titan Tower to retrieve a suitcase filled with what? We don't know.
I saw this movie. It was 3 hours and 40 minutes long. I liked Phil Silvers, but I didn't think Sid Caesar was all that funny. It's a mad, 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 mad world. Stanley Kramer, 1963. Look it up, folks. Anyway.
Buddy Hackett.
Buddy Hackett was in the film. Are they going to have a fucking ring? Are they going to have matches? Or is this going to be the show? Is everybody just running around through the fucking office?
Well, I'm not exactly sure. I think that there has to be brawling in the offices, but they also showed in a little promo video building up the event a ring on the roof with a suitcase. By the way, I'd like to know how this is getting around Connecticut's stay-at-home orders. But I guess it's a question for another time.
You mean you think that somebody is going to tell fucking Vince McMahon in the state of Connecticut that you can't go to your office building? Why, the Civil War would have been a minor skirmish next to this.
You saw what he just looked like. He could blow him over. But just...
No, he still has enough money to hire some people to do some shit.
That's true.
Anyway, whether they have a ring or not, we're going to talk about it on the drive-through next Tuesday at some point during the day. That show will drop. I don't know if they're going to set up. It's hardly needed anymore, the ring. It just kind of gets in the way.
Did you ever go up on the roof there?
Yeah, well, there's a nice, I guess 25 years ago or whatever, I guess it's still nice. There's a nice little roof garden up there. And you have places you can sit around or, a table, and you can, and they used to have every once in a while. I never went to one because that would have required me to socialize with a bunch of the people over on the business side of things. And I was too busy trying to get the fuck out of the office. But every once in a while they'd have a little lunch or bar. They call them barbecue, but they would carry shit up there and serve it or whatever. Yeah, it's a nice little area. And I'd never heard anybody pitch the idea they should have any matches up there, but we'll see what
someone has to go off the roof. Right? I mean, it won't be real.
Well, no, it's 100 fucking feet.
I'm saying it won't actually happen. There'll be a crash pad somewhere. But someone has to go off the top of the building, don't they?
Like Big Show off the top of the Kobo, or the Giant, I should say, off the top of the Kobo. As for he was a Big Show when he was just still a giant.
He didn't even miss a date after that. He wrestled that night.
Came back on that show, right? He fell off the roof of the Kobo Arena into the fucking polluted river that they have up there, whatever the river is, and then back in later on in the show. Anyway, so yes, next week, the drive-through, that's on Tuesday. The experience will be as normal next week. We want to thank everybody we've had a bunch of podcast/YouTube crossover, where people have been listening to the podcast and went to the YouTube channel because of the podcast, but people who have actually found me, fallen in love with me, become enamored of me on YouTube are now starting to listen to the podcast. We're hearing these comments. So it's a synergy.
That's right.
Thank you for agreeing with me when I just made a fucking blanket statement about something.
A synergistic relationship between the
There you go. That's what I was looking for. Yeah, that's right. No, you're supposed to jump in and reinforce the point. I don't know what. Anyway, thank you. However you found us. The YouTube channel is official, Jim Cornette. The podcast, you know where we are. You wouldn't be hearing this now. And if you have recently fallen upon or into the podcast and would like to hear the early episodes, we have started those from scratch, from way back in the before time, the long ago of 2013 on the Patreon. Is that correct?
That is correct. Patreon.com/Cornette. And thank you to everyone, the hundreds and hundreds of you now who have become patrons of the show. Every Sunday evening, a new batch of classic shows goes up. We are now in the early summer of 2014. We just put up, and this is timely, a 2-part interview with Kevin Sullivan. And this is great stuff because you guys talk about the booking committee, talk about Florida. Really, really great stuff. Everyone should check it out. Patreon.com/Cornette. Plus there's some watch-along videos and more content to come in the days and weeks and months ahead.
In the days and weeks and the months and the years ahead. Sooner or later, we will have all the content that'll be right there at your fingertips. So you can give us the finger anytime, 24 hours a day. And what are you doing this week on all the different things that you have your finger in?
Another jam-packed week. Find out where my finger is this week on the Arcadian Vanguard Podcast Network in the back of the movie theater. Find out about all of our shows on Twitter.
Actually, there's a story that story that Tony Schiavone tells when he rode back to Charlotte with me one night from a spot show in the Carolinas, where we had stopped in town after the show was over to visit with a friend of mine, and then we're on the way back to Charlotte, and I smelled something and realized what it was and what it came from and what it was on, and had to ride for 50 miles down the fucking road in the middle of the night with my right hand out the window until we could find a place where I could go in and wash my, but never mind. Anyway.
Well, I've never had it that bad, but this week on the Arcadian Vanguard Podcast Network, find out about all shows on Twitter at Superpodcast or on Facebook, facebook.com/Arcadian Vanguard. A few notes this week for patrons of John Arezzi's Pro Wrestling Spotlight, Then and Now. We have 2 special bonus episodes. 1, a roundtable discussion with John, Mick Foley, and the producers of Dark Side of the Ring about Herb Abrams. And 2, a collection of some of Herb Abrams' memorable moments on Pro Wrestling Spotlight in 1990 and 1991. You can check that out at patreon.com/Arezzi. And don't forget to check out the regular podcast each and every week at pwspod.com, are available wherever it is that you find your favorite podcasts. And on the topic of Patreon shows, for patrons of Ron Fuller's Studcast, patreon.com/Studcast. Coming up this week will be part 1 of a 2-part look at Jim Barnett, where the Tennessee Stud speaks to several guests about Jim Barnett, gets Jim Barnett's stories, does a deep dive into the life of Jim Barnett. This is a captivating and fascinating figure to wrestling fans to this day. Find out so much more. Patreon.com/Studcast. That episode is coming up this coming week. And of course, the 605 Super Podcast, The Mothership!
You shall rue this day. But go on, start ruing.
New episode out right now. Check it out. 5 hours plus of the Super Podcast.
What?
5 hours plus, almost as long as one of the Experience episodes of the Super Podcast. We have,
seems like it's that long.
Jeff Otto with the story of Great American Bash 85, Ringmasters on VHS, as well as the early days of the NWA in Philadelphia. Jeff did publicity for the NWA when they first came to Philadelphia. Some really good stuff there. We have Scott Teal and Greg Oliver, 2 of wrestling's premier authors and historians, talking about the backstory, what exactly happened with the Rocky Johnson book, Soul Man. It is now out of print. It will never be in print again. Find out what happened and why this was only in print for a very short period of time. We also have Al Getz on Charting the Territories. We take a look at some of the research he's been doing. He's been going to various places, well, before the pandemic, and finding results that no one else had in any of the, collections of results out there. He's been finding results, and we do a little bit of a look at the Midnight Express and Magnum TA in Mid-South Wrestling in 1984 by applying some of the stats he has developed. This is really interesting stuff. You should probably talk to him at some point. We also have outtakes from Kentucky Fried Wrestling with me and the late Scott Bowden. Hear why we always had so many problems getting these shows out, because we would laugh and laugh and laugh at these ridiculous scripts that Scott would write. You get to hear that, plus 1968 classic audio from Hawaii with people like Handsome Johnny Barend, Curtis the Bull Iokea, some of you may know him as King Curtis, Pampero Firpo, the Missing Link, Peter Maivia, and so many others, including the fabulous Moolah, all of a sudden on here.
Why, darling.
Hear all that, plus Vandal Drummond himself, Kurt Brown, the 605 Super Podcast, 605pod.com, are available wherever it is that you find your favorite podcasts. Call somebody! The Mothership!
Who the hell do you think you are?
The great Brian Last. Well, I don't want to ruin your laughter right away and go right to the AEW review. I did send you a video of something a lot of people are talking about. I haven't watched NXT an entire episode in quite a while, but there are various highlights that pop up here and there. And I sent you a video, I hope you watched it.
I did.
Of the debut of formerly Killer Kross, now renamed cleverly Karrion Kross, and formerly Scarlett Bordeaux, now I guess just Scarlett.
Boy, there's stuff here. By the way, Mark Merrow has changed. He looked completely different.
Oh, that's not fair. That's awful.
Well, unfortunately, that's what's happening. Scarlett is the star. Scarlett was the star of the entrance. Scarlett was the star of the thing. I'm not saying this guy isn't any good. But once again, it was the same bland, blasé. We talked about, somebody asked the question, what's WWE style? This was WWE style. first of all, the entrance was fabulous. The music is great. The guy looks tremendous, right? On the entrance, at first you thought, well, maybe they're going to feature him, but then they went back to featuring her. She was the start, and then she was the finish, but she was fabulous. But he looks good, and he obviously can do some shit. When the bell rings, every move he did, if he had pounced on that fucking guy, thrown him with whatever the fuck, boom, picked him up, thrown him again, got on top of him, imposed his will, put his fucking weight on him, ground his face a little bit and made that nice fucking mean face that old Mr. Kross has, and then dumped him again and beat him, that would have been, he would have made an impact, and he would have been able to hang with the star of the team, Miss Scarlett. Unfortunately, he pounced on the guy, threw him, and then stood up and walked around forever, looking at no one so the camera can see his face like they tell him to do. And then he did another move, and then he walked around some more. Now go back and watch the thing now that I'm saying this to you people out there, and then you'll understand the difference. Instead of that big entrance built up in our minds, we want to see what the fuck's going to go on here. And then it was a new WWF guy, does a couple moves, walks around a lot, and beats the guy. I don't know where Karrion Kross came from. I hate that fucking name. Nobody has ever named their kid Karrion in their lives. He's got a lot of potential, but why couldn't he go out and have a Brock Lesnar squash? Turn this fucking guy loose when the bell rings and he mauls a motherfucker in fucking short, quick, decisive, aggressive fashion, dumps him on his head 18 times, looks dangerous doing it, not even 18 times, 3 times, looks dangerous doing it, and fucking wins. That explosive kind of dominant performance would have held up the people's expectations from the entrance. But because and he looks good, he's in great shape, he's big, and he has the mean face time came after he got the 1, 2, 3. When he got the 1, 2, 3, or was it a submission? It was a submission. That's another thing I didn't like. Should have been an impact fucking move. Or am I confusing that with one of the AEW clips, or did he get a submission?
Now I don't remember what the finish was.
Oh, what the fuck? I've seen so much of the big guys that do the same thing. But the point is, Kross made a mean face after he got the win. That should have been his time for the mean face, and then you could have lingered on it. But when he was just walking around in between each move, making the face and being obviously stagey, he was trying to look intimidating while looking slow, plodding, and not intimidating. He would have been looking intimidating if he hadn't been wandering around taking his time, staring off into space, and been single-minded in his focus on ripping this guy's fucking lungs out. That if you're going to do an entrance like that and a package that looks like that, you got to break some fucking eggs as soon as that bell rings and make your debut and make people remember it. That was standard shit that everybody else does. Lance Archer's been doing it on the other channel. Fucking every big guy fucking does it. And it's all blah. And they tell him to do it. And it was blah. I would have told him, act like that this guy is in between you and the last scrap of food on earth as soon as that bell rings, and fucking rough him up as well as beating him. Rough him up, rub his face in it, and fucking slap him on the back of the head after you beat him and make that mean face. And do it quick. That's the way you get over. So Scarlett got over. She's going to be a star. I just hope that she's not power bombing Karrion Kross by the time this fucking thing plays out a few more weeks. Or elsewise he will end up as fucking Mark Marrow again. But yeah, she's a tough. Don't share the screen with kids and dogs. Don't share the screen with Scarlett.
With an entrance like that, A, what did you think? And B, can you just do that over and over again? I mean, this is a debut on a show with no fans there, and they did that. Are you going to do that entrance with her lip syncing and the smoke and everything every single time they come out?
Well, if you're going to do an entrance, that'd be the one to do. I liked it. It was theatrical, but at the same time, it didn't look silly. And it was a badass picture. And once again, the attention is on her until this guy, either they let him turn himself loose if he is able to, and they just aren't letting him, or until he figures out how to turn himself loose and get over as strong physically as she gets fucking visually. It's going to be the Scarlett show. But yeah, do the entrance. Why not? Because an entrance, doing an elaborate entrance in an empty arena is not, to me, off-putting on the surface of it, because they know you're doing television. The people watching the television know you're doing television. It could be an entrance for television, and it was impressive. But don't do silly, stupid shit, and make fun of the fact that you're in the empty building on a serious entrance or whatever. But that alone is not a deal breaker. It's just who's doing it, who's doing the entrance, not whether you have one or not.
Could you see them ever allowing someone on TV again with the name Killer?
Well, God damn it. Killer Kyle didn't kill anybody either.
And Killer Kowalski was one of the big stars for years. But, I mean, his name was Killer Kross. Good name. They changed it to Karrion Kross. Not so good.
What about Crusher Kross? Crippler? Maybe Crippler's too much also. Crusher Kross? Crusher Kross? Or just anything. How about anything else besides Karrion? Isn't Karrion a bird? Is there a bird called a Karrion?
I must admit, I'm not terribly familiar with that name. And like you said,
what about Karl Kross? Then the people could put their own killer in front of it. He could be, instead of Killer Carl Cox, he could be Killer Karl Kross. Anything but Karrion. But I mean, what did you think? What did you see from that debut as it was?
You kind of hit on the big thing for me, which was just it should have been a quick squash, I think. But beyond that, just the faces. At a certain point, there are guys who look tough, and there are guys trying to ham it up and look a certain way. And I thought his faces, with her it works, but his faces seemed a little hokey to me at times.
Yeah, I mean, imagine if that was a fucking aggressive heel like Terry Funk, or not even a monster heel like an Abdullah the Butcher, but just a Brock Lesnar, to use a modern example. What would he have done to the fucking guy, and how would he have looked? And how aggressive would he have been right off the bat? That's what I'm saying. To match that entrance and to keep up with her, he has to be explosive, violent, vicious, and bordering on criminal assault. And that would get over. But as it was, little bit of a letdown.
How do you think Vince will react when he sees her?
Well, he's already seen her. I guarantee you. Vince McMahon has already seen her, which is probably why that she got the majority of the fucking entrance. If not, she'll get the majority of something as soon as he does have his full control of her.
What the hell does that mean?
Well, I mean, if he's right now it's NXT. That's supposed to be Triple H's baby. When she comes up to the main roster and he has full control of her, he will put her in a variety of different positions where she will look good in all of them.
All right.
That's what I'm saying to you.
No white cotton panties, though.
No. All right. Let's go to the white cotton. God damn it. And why, if he and Shitstain had a fetish for any kind of panties, why would they be white cotton panties? It reminds me of fucking Rebecca of Donnybrook Farm. I want the fucking crotchless goddamn leather panties with the fucking, the whole oomph instead of just, fucking granny panties. For heaven's sake. Anyway, speaking of granny's panties, let's talk about AEW, because AEW is kind of like granny's panties. I really can't think of a fucking similarity. You got me so frazzled. I can't form a cogent simile to granny's panties, but it sounded like a good segue. Well, it's because Jelly Nutella was in the opening match, and he looked like he was wearing granny's panties. Anyway, they bring all their roster back. They test everybody. They go back to the full steam ahead, and it wasn't as good a show as it's been the past few weeks because they can't get out of their own way. And I will explain in detail.
That was my big takeaway, too. I'll just say it here at the top was I enjoyed the show better when they had less of a roster there. And I also will say I enjoyed the show better with Shivani and Jericho on commentary.
Yes, because once they got JR and Tony and Excalibur, Exhibit, whatever his name is, back together, they're trying to call a big time television program. And I don't want them to make fun of the business, but it was more entertaining to watch an empty arena show when Jericho was making fun of people, when he was actually being a legitimate heel and making fun of people. And you kind of, every once in a while you figure, well, I know that's Jericho. He's just being Jericho, but I think he kind of means some of that shit. But they were just commentating on regular shit, and this ain't regular shit. But yeah, I agree with you there. And also, MJF this time was in the building. He's actually in the building, and we got a 2-minute pre-tape and a minute at ringside. Why couldn't he have sat in for Tony, who we've heard a bunch of lately, with JR and fucking the masked guy, and done color on Cody's match or something? Because that would have added some oomph to the commentary without being silly or phony. But I know he's going to be on next week, thank fucking God. But still, they could have got more out of MJF. But that's the thing is, we said it last week, one of the things that's biting them in the ass is, even when they have a large number of members of their roster, because they've picked talent so poorly and chosen such marginal, underneath indie level guys, that they can't have these guys on television, especially when they need to go a couple of segments and get anything out of them. If they had a full roster of competent professionals, it might be different. The opening thing with Cody and Jelly, I'm sorry. It looked like Cody was having a match with a guy that works at Valvoline who won a contest to get to play wrestler on television. And I saw a clip of Jelly actually doing a sit-down interview, just speaking, not even about an issue, just something about him. Somebody tweeted, "What do you think about this?" And I couldn't watch but 20 seconds of it. But basically, he really is just a mush-mouthed idiot. He didn't go to wrestling school, and apparently he didn't go to school. Because he's just some fucking guy that you'd think would be hanging out somewhere in fucking New Jersey or wherever the fuck he's from. Oh, man, yeah. So Cody led the fucking idiot through a match and worked competitively with him. And there was nothing, it's probably the best match Jelly will ever have, but it was, once again, it looked like a Make-A-Wish deal where here's a star leading this guy through it, telling him what to do, and it just looked so low rent and outlaw. Because you're trying to, yes, I know Cody is trying to do the best he can to have a good match with the opponent that he has available to him on their television program, but that's where it comes in that they should have picked better talent, and they should have fucking picked better when they had the chance, because now they're stuck with these guys and they can't use them every week. So they got to rotate it a little bit. So what we ended up with was on national television in already trying times because of the pandemic that at least they're allowed to fucking acknowledge. You had a tiny little guy with a cheap outfit and a stupid looking haircut and zero athletic look, a flabby, pale, white, sway-backed fucking body, facially looks like a crackhead that lives on the beach.
No muscle tone.
No muscle tone whatsoever. Being allowed to do actual pro wrestling moves, even as sloppy as he does them. With a star, it devalues the whole fucking promotion visually for anybody watching otherwise than the people who already wanted to, who already have been supporting them, and who are going to do it through thick and thin, no matter what, to develop any new kind of audience. When they tune in and see this for 20 minutes, You can buy Cody as a wrestling star. You cannot buy Jelly Nutella as a wrestling star, whether he does the moves well or not. Even if he can fuck, it doesn't mean he's Ron Jeremy. So what you have then is, to a large percentage of people who may tune in and give it a chance, or say, hey, there's wrestling on or whatever. It's like, well, this is that, low budget stuff. Even though they're backed by a billionaire, they look low rent because of what's on the screen, which is a fucking little guy from Valvoline wrestling a fucking match with a wrestling star. The match made sense as a match because Cody led it, but it made absolutely no sense from a business standpoint to have this jabroni last more than 5 minutes with one of their top guys. And the visual of them constantly having subpar looking talent on the TV show, besides a squash match, just makes them look like what they are, which is number 2 when they don't want to be. They don't want to be viewed that way. And Jelly was kicking out of shit. Did you notice his body is twice as long as his fucking legs?
Yeah, I did not notice that.
He looks like somebody, the young folks, Google a picture of String Bean from the Hee Haw TV show in the 70s. Old String Bean. He was a country comedian and musician, and he wore these fucking short pants that made it look like his fucking legs were about 1.5 feet long, with his belt around his knees and then a long top to make it look like his body was 4 feet long. That's what Jelly Nutella looks like.
Well, it always looks like his pants are going to fall down.
Well, that's because of his sway back and his fucking flabby ass. But it just... Go ahead.
He did kick at him like everything. I mean, that's the thing. Yeah. You said, whatever you said, because Cody walked him through it, the match, you put it in a way that it was all right. It was all right for like a 5-minute match. It went almost 20 minutes. He kicked out of almost everything. There were a few spots that were completely blown. There was one point I lost it. I was laughing.
Where Cody tried to shoot him to the ramp, and he tried to do a headstand on the ramp, and he couldn't get more than 2 feet off the ground. His feet never came more than 2 feet off the ground.
That was fantastic. I lost it. I thought that was the funniest thing I've ever seen. But yeah, I mean,
that's the thing. The match made sense if it was somebody else having it with Cody. As a match, it made sense if it was anybody that could have been convincing in the Jelly Nutella role to be having it. That's what I'm saying.
If he can't beat Jelly Nutella in 20 minutes, it takes him 20 minutes to beat him, why should I think he has any chance against Lance Archer or any other main event talent?
You are correct. And then Nyla Rose. Now they do 6 months in, they do the package to get her over as a beast, to show her fucking throwing people through everything and beating everybody and setting up various challengers for her in the package of all the shit she should have been doing from the start instead of selling for a 98-pound schoolgirl that's been a professional wrestler since she was an embryo. It was an okay promo with Tony Schiavone. I don't know what threw Tony off early there. But Nyla was convincing. And then, a nice match with Kenzie Page, who we found out is trained by Dr. Tom Pritchard. Hello, Doc. And she's 18 years old, but they had to say she started wrestling at 14. Why? Why did they have to say that? Why couldn't they just say this 18-year-old young lady making her debut, trained by Dr. Tom Pritchard? You would think, well, she's a rookie, she's an adult. But no, they have a fetish for underage girls being professional wrestlers, and it just makes everything sound so fucking stupid and hokey.
I'm glad they didn't say what state she was wrestling in at the age of 14, because Chris Cruz would probably be on the phone right now.
How dare you? This is statutory wrestling here. But this is what Nyla Rose should have been doing all along, to introduce her originally, especially to Riho, beating the shit out of people. She hit a finish, pulled her up, hit her with the 3 power bombs, but it wasn't like there was retaliation in between. She just kept power bombing her and then jerking her up and doing it again, and the girl was just... So yes, if she had done this the first 3 months and then had the competitive matches that we've seen her have with all these girls half her size, it would have been a whole lot better than them putting the fucking cart before the horse and the finish before the start and the fucking following a shooting with a stabbing like they've done. That's my opinion.
I really liked her promo. I thought it was good. You know, it was fired up. And then she went in there and killed her opponent.
Yeah.
Like Cody and Karrion Kross should have done also. But I thought they really did well with Nyla Rose on this episode.
And then we had the MJF promo. And a great promo. Loved the set. Mocking sitting on the throne. Anything he does. He just the inflection and the creativity of whatever the fuck. And thankfully, he'll be in action next week. I can't. Once again, this kid's 24 years old. He has the cardio. They could have had a 5-minute match with him wrestling anybody. And it would have been more entertaining than any 5 minutes of some of the matches that we saw. Shawn Spears. He did a pre-taped promo. He was well-spoken about Dustin and Archer, Cody not throwing in the towel, but he had the hair on top. Is he a Mongol or whatever the fuck, and a beard? And then we see him live later on, and he's got a mohawk and clean-shaven. He did a good job on the promo. It's just they have not done anything with Shawn Spears to make me think that he's anything other than the third match guy on an old ICW show in Frankfurt at the convention center. Just nothing special in any way.
Well, the other thing is, he already had his little program with Cody.
Well, yeah, he started out, he was the top guy, and then we haven't seen him do shit since. And where the fuck's Tully?
Yeah, well, that's another good question. But now Cody is apparently in a program with Lance Archer. And when I saw Shawn Spears do his promo about Cody, and I know that we already saw this program, I'm thinking, this is bad. This is a bad sign. This is like 1987 NWA where everyone has to do their promos about Dusty, even if they're not working with Dusty.
Well, but what else would he have had to talk about? He hadn't done anything else.
So you don't give him promo time.
Well,
if he has nothing else to talk about except a program that he's not in, that we hope he's not in, because why would you distract from the Cody Lance Archer program by throwing Shawn Spears, who we've last seen losing at gambling in the crowd, into the mix there?
I don't. Well, when they came back live, MJF is there with Spears and Wardlow. Now Spears is, and that's where he had the different hair and no beard. MJF perked that up. Talked about watching all the play wrestling. Gosh, great minds think alike. And then did the spit take when he found out he's going to fight Jungle Boy at the pay-per-view, right? Or is that next week? Or is that's at the pay-per-view?
When I watched it, I thought they said next week, but then later on the graphics said pay-per-view, so it is the pay-per-view. And that's a match I'd actually look forward to seeing.
Well, that's going to be fucking tremendous. And they had a great match on TV here several weeks ago, right? Before everything went south.
Yeah.
It'll be excellent. Kazarian and Moxley. Tell me what you thought first so that people don't accuse you of parroting my comments.
Well, I've said it a few times recently here on the show. I like Moxley's persona, and I think he does good promos, but I'm not a fan of his actual in-ring work. I think this is one of those matches, and I feel bad saying this because I think Frankie Kazarian is a talented guy, but I knew the result before the match started. And because of that, I didn't care as much about this match as I probably should have. I thought the pacing was a little too slow for me. I did not like the match at all. I hate to say this too. I think Scorpio Sky is a tremendous talent, but I'm not a fan of SCU as a unit. And I don't know what you could do with Kazarian other than have him team with one of those guys. But as soon as the match started, I said Kazarian's going to lose. And then nothing happened pace-wise with the match that pulled me into it.
I agree with some of that. But still, we see a lot of matches where we know down deep in our heart of hearts that some guy isn't going to fucking win or whatever. But part of this, and by the way, why does Moxley still enter through an empty arena? There's no fans for him to be up there fucking showing solidarity with.
They should say he does it so he can get around the COVID-19 testing. Throw that wrinkle in there.
But here was the problem with this match. Both guys are pros. Both guys are veterans. Both guys look athletic and can work. Like you said, Moxley has the badass persona and the promos. I wish he had more size to back it up that he looks like a fucking Steve Austin kind of ass-kicking guy, but still. But they were both baby faces. These guys are both baby faces. Why have the match? If you can have a babyface match if it's set up properly for a title with a misunderstanding or whatever to sweeten it up a little bit. You can have baby faces work with each other on the underneath card. 10-minute Broadway was always good. Get them in their seats and get them set down. Open the show with two baby faces just wrestling. But two top baby faces, especially the world champion and another baby face, there was nobody to fucking boo necessarily. They have to just do shit back and forth to each other. Moxley is not a technical wizard, or at least he doesn't portray himself to be, to the point where they're going to have this big scientific match. They have to do some of Moxley's shit. They did good, solid wrestling at home, but it was nothing to write home about. But if they wanted to have a babyface versus babyface match, I would have had Cody against Kazarian for a great wrestling match, go 15 minutes. And Cody go over, and it wouldn't hurt Kazarian, and put Moxley with Jelly because Moxley can do the garbage wrestling that Jelly knows how to do, and let Moxley beat Jelly up for 6 or 8 minutes. But
yeah, by the way, I agree with you. That probably would have made me care about the Kazarian match more if it was him and Cody and then Moxley and Nutella.
And Kazarian, I will say, I like him, and he has the strangest headlock grip I've ever seen. I don't know if he's got a broken finger or what, but anyway. But the guys, they're in shape. They can work. Their shit looked good. Besides being a babyface match, there was nothing wrong with it. It was a little long, but that was understandable because of the situation. Better than seeing one of the joke wrestlers they'd trot out because of the thin roster. Their roster of legitimate major league talent is thin, and it's their own fault. And then suddenly Moxley got this double arm DDT, the paradigm shift. If you did a fucking survey outside the arena when there was fans, how many of them would be able to define paradigm?
Oh, I don't know. That's a good question. Probably not many.
The paradigm shift. I'd rather get hit with the paradigm shift than get hit with Abdullah the Butcher's meat cleaver. I understood that. Anyway, following this match, 6 or 7 fat schlubs and children dressed up in dork order outfits and black masks jump Moxley and beat him up. And there was nobody doing the fake punches on the mat like there was in that famous clip, but this looked just short of that as far as bad. Are these not trained wrestlers? Are they not even wrestling school students? There was one guy that did the spine buster that was topless, didn't have a shirt on. He looked good. I think Pizzeria Uno was in there. His shit doesn't look any good, but at least you know he's been a wrestler. The rest of these guys,
I don't think he was there. I don't think.
I thought he was the fat one. There was a fat one with a mask.
I was under the impression that the original Dark Order, Uno and Grayson, weren't there, that these are all the makeshift guys and the shirtless guy who's the new guy they brought on.
I knew I didn't see Grayson because he don't wear a mask, but I thought the fat guy in the black shirt and the mask, maybe there's just another fat guy. The point is, it was horrible. Phony fucking heat offense. They're beating up fucking Moxley, who's having to sell for this. They beat up SCU. Daniels and Sky came back out. Horrible, bad heat that went on forever. Here's the problem that they've found out: when you've got baby faces in the crowd that mean anything, they are buried by this. And because that used to be something back in the old days when you had nothing to do in the locker room but go out and watch the matches. You could do some stuff in the parking lot, but if you were done with the parking lot and you had nothing to do in the locker room, you went out and watched the matches. But the booker or one of the referees or whatever, somebody in the match would always warn you, hey, we've got a hot finish or we're getting heat after. So all the baby faces would be gone and they wouldn't be seen watching the heels getting heat, because then why aren't they making a save? So I didn't keep track of who was in the crowd, but you had a couple of baby faces. But the fucking point is, nobody tried to help. Nobody tried to stop this. And then Brody Lee comes out, hits Daniels with a chair, clotheslines Moxley, stands over Moxley, and did possibly the worst, emotionless, unconvincing promo I've ever heard. The Stooges standing over Moxley, who's finally selling something. Remember, we said he could get run over by a fucking truck and wouldn't sell it. Now he's finally staying down, and it's something he shouldn't have been selling because it made the world champion look like a fucking idiot. This whole thing was phony, boring, contrived, fucking rotten, buried Moxley. The promo went forever. He had to lay there and sell so long while he was talked down to with nobody trying to help him. And then they build up to this whole thing where Brody Lee has issued the challenge and Moxley crawls over trying to be the badass in the movie. Yes, sir, may I have another? That crawls over and said, hey, man, all you had to do was ask. And then they beat him up again. And it looked like shit then, too. Why are they fixated on this dork order bullshit? Brody Lee is less interesting now than he was before I had seen him ever. The promos don't work. He's reciting scripts. He's not using words that sound natural. This whole fucking thing and all these fucking idiots and these masks. It's just it's stinker time. You're telling people this is going to be a stinker. Anytime we see these fucking schlubs come out, this is going to fucking be bad and suck. And if they realize it, they will not. They're Vince level stubborn on this. They won't fucking quit. So Brody Lee is useless at this point in terms of drawing any money.
Yeah, there's not too much I got to add to that. The Dork Order is go away heat, and they've now infiltrated the heavyweight championship. They're now in that mix, and in a way, I'm surprised that they're rushing right away to put Brody Lee in the title match, or I don't know if it's just the title picture or the title match because of the, there's still guys not there. The Young Bucks and Hangman Adam Page aren't there, so they're still playing with a makeshift roster. But I'm surprised he's already getting put into that spot. I was looking forward to seeing what he can do in AEW when they signed him, and I think the little flashes we've seen in the ring, he's very talented in the ring. It's just this gimmick is death.
What did I say 3 weeks ago or so on the program? How do you present this guy? I don't have the answer. He's big and he can look impressive, but I'm not hearing a promo. I'm not seeing an animal passion out of him. His outfit is horrible. The gimmick, of course, the whole Dork Order thing is just fucking rotten. How do you present him? I'm not getting a vibe on how you present this guy. Sometimes you just can't fucking figure it out. But they're certainly not making the WWE eat their fucking sentiments with Brody Lee.
No, not at all. And you attach him to this death gimmick, the Dork Order. It's just so stupid. So stupid.
Anyway. But speaking of which, next coming up, Brandy seated at a desk doing a promo about Lance Archer and Jake Roberts. This might have been good. Actually, no, it wouldn't have. It was plainly, obviously scripted and being recited by her. There was no natural delivery to it at all. But it also sounded like she was going to bow up at Jake Roberts. You're not going to slap me. Well, what are you going to do about it if he decides to? It came off as heelish to me, almost her demeanor, but it's obviously a well-shot vignette with somebody reciting scripted verbiage. This did not come from the heart.
Once again, this is not sport-based wrestling. This is an audition for a show on the CW. A villain on Supergirl or The Flash or whatever these shows are. That's what that was. She's very good at delivering lines. I should be good on a scripted show. But it came across as completely unbelievable. And
well, because also if it was a scripted show, there'd be somebody better scripting the lines.
That's right. Well, this was just the beginning of our moment of brandy here. A shot of brandy.
Yeah. Talk about, it's a jug of brandy. And look at that jug, by the way. Anyway, So here comes QT Marshall with Brandy against Lance Archer with Jake. So automatically, you would think that Brandy would have the advantage. Once again, Jake Roberts, a dangerous, evil human being, is out here with the Murder Hawk monster. And Cody's going to let his wife go to ringside with a underneath card guy, the way that QT, I like QT, but that's the way he's been presented. So here you've got
She didn't go to the ring with him. She didn't go to the ring with Cody.
Well, that's what I'm saying. What if she's going to be out there? It didn't make any sense. She's telling people that probably Jake is going to try to corner her, intimidate her, but it ain't going to work. Well, how's it not going to fucking work? What are you going to do to Jake to begin with? Nothing. And secondly, QT Marshall is not Cody's brother, Dustin. It's QT. And so Cody's letting his wife go out here with the Murder Hawk monster and Jake Snake Roberts. They must not be that dangerous. I love Jake with the mask. This was a good match. Archer, he gave QT offense when he needed to, but stayed on him and never totally let QT take over. Archer, he worked his ass off to keep up the intensity more than he did last week. Maybe he's been listening. I love you, Lance. In the Brody Lee versus Lance Archer sweepstakes, Lance Archer is winning in a runaway with
Absolutely.
this, as far as being a new top guy.
No contest.
I said they had to do a spot with Brandy and Britt Baker with the fucking shoe, and that really distracted from and got in the way of the business of the match. Because suddenly, why did Britt Baker hit QT Marshall with her shoe, and then Brandy gets the glory of throwing it away? But they should have been concentrating on Lance Archer here. I will say one thing. If Lance Archer did the head palm shoot off into the ropes on one of my shows, I would fine him $500. I hate that, and it looks so bad. But then there was a bit of a comeback, but Lance hit a big finish, boom, and then pinned him with the claw. I'm not sure about the claw. I thought the finish looked good. I'd like to see more impact maneuvers from these big guys. Boom, 1, 2, 3, convincing, rather than the tap outs and the stationary pin type of things. But that was a good match and got Lance Archer over more than most things they've done with him. But then, once again, Britt Baker, I know they've switched her heel, but what does she have to do with this issue? Is Britt joining Archer and Jake? She jumped Brandy and DDT'd her and then tossed her in the ring. But Britt tried to toss her the wrong direction, and Brandy ain't used to rolling, and she couldn't hardly get her in the ring. But then Jake brings the snake in, puts the snake on Brandy. And again, nobody helped. The fans would have cheered. They're like, oh, shit, they're going to get rid of Brandy. But why was Britt Baker involved? Why could
I could tell you
Brandy?
why.
Well, hold on. It just real quick. If Brandy went to check on QT and had her back turned for a moment, and Jake came up behind and fucking flipped that fucking snake over and jerked it back on top of her, and she, oh, shit, it'd have been the same thing. But, she was laid out by a DDT from a girl that had nothing to do with the angle, and then all Jake did was really just lay the snake on her already. They never fucking did any damage to Brandy for any retribution to be called for on behalf of Dustin.
Well, first of all, you're leaving out that Jake dry humped Brandy.
Well, yes. Well, he did that too, but that was after he put the snake on her.
Which was quite a moment there. No, Britt Baker, in a matter of a few months, has gotten over, I think, with the AEW fans and even people like me who we watch every week. We want to like AEW, but there's so much that we don't like that it kind of makes it so that we can't say that we're AEW fans. But she's gotten over with everyone as this heel. She's been great in that role.
Yes.
Just every time they show her in the crowd, she's just become dynamite, for lack of a better term, on this show. So naturally, Stephanie wants to get into a feud with her. So she can
Stephanie, you mean Brandy.
Slip up there. Actually, yeah. So Brandy, now that I think about it, I guess. But naturally, Brandy wants to now be in a feud with her. So in the middle of all this, the top female heel, Nyla Rose, aside, Brandy has to get involved with her. And then after that theatrical promo, she has to get in there and She's now in this thing with Jake. It's so ridiculous.
If it had been up to me, I said, well, Brandy rolls in to check on old QT. Jake comes up from behind her and grabs her and gives her the fucking DDT. And she's laying there, and then fucking Lance comes up and dry humps her. And fuck the snake. And then you think Cody wants to get even? That's something to get even over.
Well, here's another thing. They did a good job on commentary. They explained that Cody, because he's, I guess, attached to the football stadium.
He was too far away.
Too far away to get there.
We never saw him come after the fact, did we?
That's the point. We never got the fired up promo. You motherfuckers, you went after my girl. You dry humped her. You DDT'd her. I'm going to kick everyone's ass. You needed that. We shouldn't have to wait a week to see the fired up husband.
Yeah, well, if he's that fired up a week later, he'd have had a heart attack. Yeah, there's parts of things here, but and I saw somebody said, well, they couldn't have a man touch a woman. Well, they could if they want to get some fucking heat. Jake DDT'd Dirty White Girl while Dirty White Boy was handcuffed to the fucking ropes and watching. And that was some heat in the fucking building. Of course, Jake then fucking never showed up again. But anyway.
He DDT'd Dark Journey in 86.
DDT Dark, yeah. The point is, it's just all over the fucking place.
Hey, can I ask you a question?
Yeah.
If all of that had happened the way it happened with a crowd there, where they had popped for Brandy getting DDT'd and then...
Yes.
Yeah, they would have gone
They would have
crazy.
cheered. Yeah, they would have cheered because they are appealing to fans who go to see wrestling as a fucking rib. And they're just going to laugh at things. Speaking of laughing at things, let's finish this up strong. The last match of the night, the street fight. And I thought this might be fucking good. Chris Jericho and Sammy Guevara, we've liked them. Obviously, we've been talking good about Guevara. Jericho's had good matches against Olivier. Well, and the debut of Matt Hardy. Okay, you got some name value. You got some star power. It's a main event match. I thought this was going to be good. I forgot that there's nobody in control here, that the inmates are being left to their own devices. Yes, Olivier came to the ring making his insufferable twat faces and gesticulating wildly. But once they all got out there, they jump-started it and off they went. And yes, Olivier's brawling looks like shit because he can't do it, but they were in and out of the fucking ring and it was fast-paced and it had picked up and boom, boom, boom. And the action was wild. And then suddenly Matt and Jericho leave. But then Jericho comes back. They've gone through the entranceway. Jericho comes back, and Jericho and Guevara are double teaming the piss out of Olivier, and they're beating shit out of him. And finally, here comes Matt Hardy, and he jumps in and makes a comeback. And I thought at first, I was like, wait a minute, what the fuck? And I had to I had to rewind the show to see before he left. When he came back out, he had changed his clothes. He was dressed in a different outfit. He was dressed like the Hardys used to dress years ago or whatever. Is that what we were supposed to get out of that?
Yes. He has gone from teleportation to outfit changes.
So what now, right off in the start of this match, in the first segment, Matt Hardy's long-awaited wrestling debut on All Elite Wrestling partners with supposedly the world's greatest wrestling artist against the top heel group with Jake Hager in the corner. The heels are kicking the shit out of Olivier, and Matt Hardy took time to change his clothes before he came back to the ring to help out. So this is now immediately garbage.
And by the way, apparently when he changes his clothes, his personality changes as well.
Well, I don't care. It's fucking stupid and it's phony and now it's not real. And Olivier is not in any kind of real trouble because his partner wouldn't come out and help him when he had the chance before he changed clothes for no reason. And then Matt makes a comeback and then Jericho. Chris, what the fuck has happened? Is the COVID affected your brain? Chris Jericho gets a baseball bat and hits Kenny Olivier with it twice, gut shot and back shot, and Olivier immediately foils Sammy Guevara's off the top rope move and was back up on offense the very next thing. And then both Olivier and Matt Hardy go out of the ring and go under the ring and start looking for weapons, tables and ladders, when they've left a loose baseball bat laying in the ring in plain sight. They've walked past the baseball bat that they could just pick up and just bash the fuck out of their fucking opponents with, to go under the ring and find shit that they can set their opponents onto, and then jump off of things through oh, fucking hell. So they get a ladder and they get a table and they put Guevara on the table, and Matt Hardy splashes off the ladder through the table and gets a 2 count because Jake Hager pulls the referee out. The baseball bat's still laying there. Nobody's caring about it anymore because it's not time for that spot yet. And they go to a break with picture-in-picture, which I don't ever watch because it's too small and I don't give a shit. But by the time they come back, they have fought out not only in the arena, but the outer arena, the concourses and the hallways, and they're headed next door to the football stadium. And a fight in the outer arena would be great if they hadn't done this at least 3 times so far this year. At least 3 that I remember. And besides that, if it was a fight that had gotten out of hand and went there, that'd be great. But we already know it's not a fight because they've already been stupid and phony in the first segment. And ignored things like loose baseball bats laying around because they weren't supposed to use them, and changed clothes in the middle of a fucking brawl. Then they put Matt Hardy in the fucking ice machine, which I admit, if I had seen an ice machine there and we were going to do a fight there, I would have wanted somebody to go in the ice machine. But I would have not have wanted them to come out of the ice machine later on having changed clothes again. He changed back in the ice machine to what he was originally wearing. Did he not?
He absolutely did.
Am I hallucinating?
It may seem like you were, but no, this is what actually happened. Sport-based wrestling.
Sport-based wrestling, right after Sammy Guevara ran Kenny Olivier into the ATM and then pulled money out of it. So the heels are doing the comedy stuff here, not even the baby faces. Then Matt Hardy comes out of the ice machine dressed differently. And Matt gets a golf cart and clips Jericho with it very lightly. And Jericho kind of spun off because he's like, what the fuck? I'm not going to fucking cripple myself for this. But then he ran over Sammy Guevara. And Guevara took a hell of a bump. Imagine if they'd actually had a real match that people thought they were serious about, and then saved that for after the fucking finish, when they fought for 90 seconds out somewhere, and then they did the run over the guy with the fucking golf cart. Maybe it would have been cool. But that's the second guy that had just got hit with a golf cart in the previous minute and a half. Then Matt Hardy puts Jericho on a table, and Olivier was going to the top of a scissors lift to come off onto it, but they fucking saved Jericho, so Kenny Olivier moonsaulted onto everybody and hit his own partner as well as his opponents. But here came Santana and Ortiz, and they interfered, and they powerbombed Matt Hardy through the table. And then Jericho powerbombed Olivier on top of the golf cart and then hit the Judas effect. And both Chris Jericho and Sammy Guevara pinned Kenny Olivier out on the football field AstroTurf. This sounds like what I was reading from the Maryland State Athletic Commission earlier. Stupid. What the fuck? I couldn't delete this fast enough. And this is their main event guys that are obviously doing joke, phony, corny bullshit when they're supposed to be mad at each other. So they better like the existing fan base they have, because that's all they're going to get. And once that existing fan base gets tired of this thin talent roster and these contrived stunts, what are they going to do then? They've only been on television for 6 months. And to not even promote, not even shoot an angle for a pay-per-view match, or not even to get a new guy over or whatever. They're just doing this shit on TV because they've got the ability to do this shit on TV. Where they go from here? Next time it's not a golf cart, it's a rider truck that runs over the guy. Or now they got to fight on the roof of the fucking stadium. Or they got to goddamn go out in the fucking parking lot and cross the street and go into somebody else's business. Or whatever the fuck. They've only been on television for 6 months. They're not even trying to do this to increase business. They're just doing it to goddamn put shit out there because Tony Khan's a fucking mark. And the guys are convinced they're all stars. And that anything they do, people are going to get a tickle out of. And they can't be saved from themselves from being stupid and silly to get their own selves over because there's no Bill Watts or Dusty Rhodes or a Dutch Mantel or goddamn any competent booker to say, no, you're not going to do that. You're going to do fucking this and you're going to fucking like it, or you can go back and try to get your money from Vince again. There are different styles of wrestling. Everybody says, well, it's just a different style of wrestling. There's all kinds of styles of wrestling. Yes, there are all kinds of styles of wrestling. But this shit ain't any of them. Yes, if you have a sports-based presentation, Mid-South Wrestling was good for fucking collegiate wrestlers that had turned pro and were real shooters. And it was also good for football players and beer drinkers and tough guys and brawls. And it was also good for high spot matches. But you wouldn't do a dick spot. You wouldn't have the Invisible Man because that wouldn't make any sense. You would have, if you went to Florida, you'd have great wrestling on the card, a Jack Briscoe, an NCAA champion. You'd have a wild, bloody mayhem like Dusty Rhodes. You'd have the British World of Sport style, Billy Robinson or Tony Charles underneath. But you wouldn't have a goddamn dick spot or an Invisible Man or a guy changing clothes in the ice machine because it wouldn't make any sense. And it doesn't fit at all. It's not a style of wrestling. It's a completely different other thing. And if that's what they're doing, then that's what they're doing. But the people they get are going to be the people that they get. And they've got the people they're going to get with this shit. If even the main event guys can't be serious enough to pull you into something and get over based on we're going to have a fight and you're going to want to see it, then it's just a fucking vaudeville show. It's just a fucking clown show. And nobody's going to prosper. So that, and once again, 6 months, and they've been all over the arena, and people are being run down by golf carts and fucking moonsaulted off fucking scissors lifts. Where do they go from here? And who's going to go that far? Fucking Jesus Christ. There's some talent in the middle of all this, but none of it can be saved from itself because there's no clear vision and there's nobody there that they're all scared of to fucking say, no, we're going to do it this way and this is the right way, and I know that. There's no Eddie Graham. There's no Roy Shire. There's no Vern Gagne. Vern made a lot of money till the end there.
Tony's the best boss I've ever had. He lets me do all the great things I always wanted to do that Vince wouldn't let me do.
Yeah, exactly.
And then we could have a drink together.
Now I know why. All the guys in the locker room always knocked whoever the boss was except me until Herd came along. Because I was the only one. I was like, yeah, they are assholes, and they should be, because that's the way this shit runs. That's why I never had problem. I never had a problem being screamed at. Otherwise, I didn't want to be screamed at anymore. So I made sure not to fuck up. And I never had a problem with screaming at anybody if they were fucking up, because then they were fucking up my shit. But I guarantee when we went to promos at Channel 3 in Shreveport, every fucking Wednesday morning, the cameras were afraid to break down. If anything was not to Watts' liking, you would get bombarded. And you wouldn't want to do that anymore. And everybody sat there and fucking took it. Too bad everybody's so sensitive these days that nobody can be told you are a complete blithering idiot. You don't know how to get over. You're fucking yourself up. You got a lot of talent. Do more of this, less of that. Don't ever do this again or I'll fucking fire you. And I'll get your fucking ass over.
And that was him talking to his son.
Well, there you go. Yeah, I remember Joel, you blithering idiot. That was the fucking Joel, you blithering idiot. We heard across the fucking Irish McNeil Boys Club one night. Joel Watts had done something and Bill Watts had found out about it. But anyway, so that was the AEW show. But who knows? Maybe it'll look better after we see what Money in the Bank is. Maybe on the Money in the Bank, they're going to have one of the guys run into the women's restroom on the 4th floor and come out having had a complete sex change operation in the commercial break.
No, because there are no commercial breaks. It's pay-per-view.
That's true. Well, they're going to have to be quick about it then. Choppy, your pee-pee. All right. Join us on the fucking drive-through for that next week. You got to get out of here, don't you? You got to see A Man About a Dog. I got things to do, place to go, to people to see, all kinds of stuff. Thank you for listening to The Experience again this week. We'll be back again soon. Until then, Brian, do you have anything to say?
Nope.
Good. Thank you. Fuck you. Bye-bye, everybody.